Well, hello everybody and welcome to the 384th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse podcast. I'm your host Steve Wellings, and joining me on the call we have Rapping Rob Kelly, Andy and Gabe, the Texas Tornado, going live on YouTube 8 o'clock every Sunday. Don't forget the Patreon RSS feed updates shortly after the show concludes. Go to patreon.com/Boxing Asylum if you want to grab that. Hello to everybody listening during the week on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. There's a message telling me we're going live. I know we're going live. Thank you very much. I'm doing it. Amazon Podcasts as well. Somebody said to me this week, are you on Amazon Podcasts? Didn't even know Amazon did do podcasts, but there you go. You might find us on there soon. Don't forget to leave a review of the podcast as well on the podcast player of your choice. We're on Stitcher throughout the entire month of August. Nothing less than 5 stars is acceptable. Gabe's already done that. How are you, Gabriel? Keeping well over there in the free state of Texas?
Yeah, doing good. Just went out this weekend, shot some guns, celebrated freedom, all that good shit.
Good stuff. Good to hear from you. Rapping Rob Kelly's on with us from the start. You always know it's going to be a good pod when Rob's here. How are you, Roberto?
Hanging, absolutely hanging all day. So yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of the fights, done some late catching up. So it's a couple of decent scraps. It was a good weekend. It's the bank holiday over here, so lucky I'm not on it again tonight actually. But dedicated myself to the pod. Want to get in. I don't want to be ballooning up and down in weight in between pods. So trying to stay on fighting weight at the moment.
Hard work and dedication from Rob as usual. Andy, how are you keeping everything all right over there?
Brand new, mate. Got a wee bit of suntan, working hard in the garden and all that sort of stuff. Back to work next week. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the pyrotechnics and stuff, it sold the show.
Absolutely. Talking of pyrotechnics, let's throw in a pyrotechnic of our own. What would Chisora say about the show last night? That's what I'm wondering. Let's hear from him.
We want to be honest, yeah? You're a fucking bum. You're a fucking asshole. I hope you fucking die.
Bit harsh from Derek, but he speaks the truth, Andy. Shout out to everybody in the chat room there. Bit of slow chat room tonight. Only the 4,123 knocking about. Boxing's first is there as usual. Joe Kennedy, friend of the pod. Nathan Newman, another friend of the pod. Leroy Guts. Stephen Merchant, Take Ames. They're all in there. Yep, Nathan having a great time. Let's go on first of all then, shall we, to the pyrotechnics, Andy. Start with you. Matchroom boxing. Sam Eggington against Ted Cheeseman. Headlining the show. James Tennyson as well against Gavin Gwynn. Jordan Gill against Reece Bellotti. Fabio Wardley. I was impressed with Wardley. We'll come to him later. First thing I want to clear up. A few people messaging me through the week thinking I was being a bit harsh on the egg versus cheese thing. But I just wanted to clarify. My problem wasn't necessarily with the Cheeseman versus Eggington fight, which in itself, 2 big punch bags, British level scrap. Why not? But I'm putting it within the context of Eddie Hearn himself. This is the guy who said he's going to take over world boxing. This is the guy who said he's got a Mary Poppins checkbook. This is the guy who's shitting on Stephen Espinoza, Al Heyman and the PBC, saying that their list of fights is absolute wank. So once you put it into that context, I'm expecting big things, and I get presented with Eggington against Cheeseman. Within that context, I wasn't that impressed. Give me Eggington against Cheeseman any other time. That's okay. That's fine. I'll take it. But upon your own boasts, Eddie, that's why I was shitting on it last week. Just wanted to clear that up, Andy.
Light that cigar, man. Said it well and said it truthfully. Yeah, I mean that's all it was. It's it was okay. It was a good show. I mean, you got an emphatic knockout. 2 emphatic kind of stoppages anyway. You got a main event that was blood and guts. Cheeseman hurt. The right hand that was early in the fight, I think it was, and then basically kind of made to walk through fire to try and pull out the fight. Who was the other? I didn't see by Bellotti, so I can't really comment on that fight. James Tennyson, back down at British title level, vacant title, fights a non-puncher, and eventually kind of wears him down in the end and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I suppose decent all round, but if Eddie's want to kind of, as we said last week, praise BTL, what he's coming out with and stuff like that, that is the standard that we're looking at. And again, I think it kind of harps back again to like the actual depth at Eddie's stable as well. Just the talent's not there. I always got all the big name fighters. Eddie's come in with the big DAZN deal and all that sort of shit, and they started talking, big jive about signing all the fighters, all the names, Broners, Charlos, all that type of stuff, and that hasn't delivered. And this is what he's come back with. Now, as I say, it'll be interesting to see what he does, figures-wise. I'm expecting those out any minute now because, the BT ones were out quick. So I'm assuming Eddie will be on to Coppinger telling us what the figures were. Now it'll be like something like 3.8 million live probably as well. I think by the end of the week, that'll be something like 15 25 million people have watched it by that point. So yeah, but Eddie's come back here. He saved the sport, hasn't he? Really good card, really good pyrotechnics and stuff, and just a pity we didn't get fireworks in the ring. Through all the fights on that card and that. But at the end of the day, that is his standard. That's what he's coming back with. To be honest with you, he knows himself. He's not got the names, to even match the likes of Heyman and stuff like that. Oscar needs to up his game a wee bit, I think. But as you says, mate, we've been doing a wee bit of investigating into Ortiz, as we says last week. And that I think Garcia is really, he shouldn't be getting the push by Oscar. It should be Ortiz. He should be getting the push. Warren's come back, kind of like probably a wee bit like Eddie, and that kind of steady, bringing in the kind of domestic level fighters. Very low records like 6-0 type guys and stuff like that, because they're cheap. That's all it is, and just that's what we're going to be getting until we can get guys back in the stands and stuff like that. Which, by the way, with all these kind of outbreaks, these kind of cluster outbreaks and stuff like that, I think it just basically confirms we need a vaccine to move forward, and that's just the way it is. So.
Andy calling for vaccines on a Sunday evening. Stephen Merchant says if he didn't go balls deep in all the production and pantomime, he could have invested in a much better level and standard of fights. Highguard Plodder makes an interesting point in the chat. He says all the PBC has done is announced a schedule. Their first card has already fallen apart. Yes, I agree with you about that. Stephen Fulton was busy opening up a restaurant in Philadelphia, hanging around with the punters with no mask on, and contracted COVID. I agree with that, but you can't hold that against them, the fact that people are contracting COVID, just like I wouldn't hold that against Eddie either. But it's apples and oranges. One has announced a pretty strong list of fights, which obviously are signed, sealed, and set in stone. All they need to do is get delivered. That's the PBC. If people fall off the card with COVID or whatever, then that's not their fault. Same with Eddie. He's also produced a list of fights. His happened to have Eggington Cheeseman, Harper Jonas, and all these other crap fights. If they fall off the card, then that's still not his fault, but they were shit to begin with. So it's apples and oranges. So you can't, what I'm saying? You can't blame the PBC. You can't blame Eddie. But the product they've both presented is night and day as far as I'm concerned, Andy.
Sorry, mate, as well as even if say the Taylor fight falls off the card, for example, and in fact, just say the two fights on that card, White and Taylor fall off that card. Eddie's left with shit. If they contract COVID or something like that, by no fault of their own, has Eddie got a stand-in? That card's going to go. That's a pay-per-view as well.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're putting on a standard show, say I don't know, I'm trying to think of the non-PBC pay-per-views. Say Lipinets against Abdu Kokorov or something like that. If one of them fall out, then it's going to be a lesser quality fight because the lesser quality opponent's coming in. But if one of Eggington or Cheeseman are tested positive, then you're going down a little bit further into the gutter. You understand what I'm saying? The bar has been set that low to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tennyson need to step up because it's a British title fight probably. But then again, you would probably need to bring in maybe a short notice. But even then, you couldn't even do that because obviously I think the way Eddie's working it as well is, they've got to be quarantined for so long, is it 24, 48 hours, before the weigh-in, and then they've got to be isolated again after the weigh-in, eat alone, sleep alone, and all that sort of stuff and that as well. So you can't even bring someone in kind of like late notice. So all he says it's out with their control, but if you're just hoping actually these cards, especially the BBC cards, because these are absolutely tremendous fights. And if they start kind of falling by the wayside, this is where you're going to have your problem. You're not going to have guys stepping up. For example, you couldn't have, say, Eggington fell out of there last night. You didn't even have another super welterweight on the card to actually bring them up to maybe fight Cheeseman as a stand-in or whatever and that. So it says we're just kind of like hoping and praying we're going to get lucky that none of these fighters are going to catch it. And as you say, if the fighters do catch it, then obviously it's them to blame, really, isn't it? Because they've put themselves into a position that they know they should be fighting, so they need to be well at the road, isolated, and just fucking pray that they're going to get through it.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be objective because I'm not. We've sat on this show and shit on the likes of Hearn and Frank Warren before him for years, so I'm not going to pretend I am. But Stephen Merchant, again, I agree with what he says. There's a massive agenda against the PBC. Their schedule is head and shoulders above the rest. There's no question about it. Levels above. I agree with that. From what I've seen of the PBC, both inside and out, I like it. And people over in America, certain eminent boxing writers, don't cover them as they should. Highguard Plodder said some of these fights are for October and November, though. Who knows what will happen? Yes, exactly. But when Eddie announced his shows 3 months ago, they were for August. So who knows what would happen there? The point is the quality of the fights of the PBC, whether they happen or not, are set in stone and are due to happen. that's the point that I'm trying to make. Anyway, let's move on, shall we, Gabe? Hopefully you get what I'm getting at here. You're a big DAZN subscriber. Did you tune into Eggington against Cheeseman, or maybe you want to comment about my ongoing battle with Highguard Plodder? The floor is yours, Gabe.
No, I actually didn't catch the fights. I was out of town celebrating my mother's birthday. I did get home in time to catch the Showtime card. So no, I didn't see it. But I mean, I do think that you're right. So in the big picture of things, I don't think the PBC stuff that's coming out is really something I'm super excited about in terms of big picture. You know, I think there's much bigger, much better fights that could be made, but certainly it's better than anything we saw on ESPN. I mean, any of the champions that we had fighting on ESPN were fighting nondescript opponents. I mean, it was set up fights. Yeah, good. Get them back in the ring, get them going, get some exposure on them, and then hopefully later this fall, when the situation is a little bit more clear, or early next year, possible vaccines, whatever is available, and you can get people back in, so you can generate the money that you need to pay these guys the exorbitant amounts that we've been paying them for years. So that was an issue. I mean, I don't think anybody's put on cards that are better than what PBC is doing. Yeah, the Charlo thing is pay-per-view, but what have you seen out there that's been better than some of the stuff that PBC is on, you know? And you're talking, for me, that's an important thing, because typically I'm more on the side of the things that are happening on the zone and the top ranked stuff, because PBC has traditionally given us a few fights that are good and a lot of crap. And there's been a lot of times where the PBC has missed on the mark, just because fights that should have been really good weren't. So whenever they were first getting started, they put on a shit ton of good matches. But the downside to that was that they were good on paper. They just didn't turn out to be as good in practice as they were on paper. So I'm with you, Steve. I think the PBC's got the best stuff going right now. Hopefully it will be as good in practice as it is on paper.
I hope so. It's inevitable that some of these fights will fall by the wayside, but I think the intention is there, and the intention has been to put on good fights. So praise be to Al Heyman, as I often say. Praise be to Rob Kelly, Sam Eggington, Ted Cheeseman. What about James Tennyson against Gavin Gwynn? We all know Tennyson's level. He's dynamite at that British Commonwealth up to European level. Absolute monster puncher at that type of form. Gwynn, he was tough. He'd never been stopped before, but his face looked like it had been run over by a steamroller at the end. Tennyson can go so far. I think that fight with Patera is naturally the next one. Did you see that one? You can comment on Eggington Cheese if you want.
Yeah, Eggington Cheeseman. I suppose I was going in on all these fights a little bit last week, saying basically kind of addressing them in terms of the standard that they actually are, rather than the event. Do you know what I mean? Because there's not, the lads are where they are in world boxing, and they're there for a reason. Eggington and Cheeseman's, but the two of them gave the performance that we would have expected. And like you said, regular Saturday night, not too bad. You know, in terms of coming out of the lockdown, we understand why we have this fight. The two of them are a cheap option, and they give a bit of action, so you can't really complain about it. Tennyson is very highly thought of over here. I don't know how far he can go. I don't know if he could be a competitor at world level. I have my doubts. Gwynn was a tough guy, but I couldn't see as Tennyson goes up the levels, him kind of doing anything really. So he's won. Was that for a British title? Vacant, I think it was a vacant British title.
Vacant British title, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could probably win a European title or go as far as that. But I think he's already won a European title. Maybe that was an EBU one, or was it?
At the weight the weight below, he did, yeah.
Weight below, yeah. So he might have a chance of winning the European title again. I think that's probably his level. But punches very hard and gave a good account of himself against the kind of tough opponent. But I don't think he's. I don't think either of the two of them are going to be world beaters. And those kind of clashes across the weekend are what they are. We just got prospects at the moment, and kind of domestic fighters fighting it out when things get back to normal. So, not a bad weekend of scraps in total, but nothing to really get me excited either.
Yeah, we'll no doubt return to this card later on whenever Ozzy appears. He's running a little bit late tonight, got things to do. We were supposed to have 2 guests on. Unfortunately, both of them are called in sick, so we won't have any guests this evening. We have a tournament. We left the bantamweights last week. We're not going down, but I think we're going to go up in the weights, back to heavyweights. One of our friends has sent in a little gatekeepers versus contenders versus fringe champions tournament, so that should be pretty good later on. Let's give a shout out to some of our Patreon guys. Last week I read out 2 of the lists. I neglected to read out list number 3. Apologies to those boys. Let's get to them right now before we move on. Kevin Crawford, Matthew Reynolds, Daniel Wilson, Saul Brocklehurst, Gary Lockwood was in touch during the week. Shout out to you, Gary. Davy Man 100, Jamie, Mike Wrigley, Holt, always good for a question or two, Holly Lewis, Red West, Jamie D, Gordon, Sean Nomas Vidal, Ian Perry, Slip Digby, and Richard Lodder. Praise be to those boys. Not sure what you saw of the undercard, Andy. I was impressed with that Fabio Wardley. I was talking to Ames earlier about this, actually. Considering the guy has no amateur experience, had like 4 white-collar fights, I thought he moved the head really well. He slipped and ducked. He clearly punches hard. He's has a good jab on him as well. As for Villali, for a guy who was a decent amateur, very good amateur, I think he was a Commonwealth gold medalist. He shouldn't be up at heavyweight. I think he's too lightweight. I don't think he's there mentally. He's quite mentally fragile. But Wardley didn't mess about, got stuck straight into him, got rid of him. This is a guy who could make a bit of noise at British title level, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think the writing was on the wall for Villali actually after the Scouse lad beat him. That was a decent scrap actually, Chris Glover. But yeah, I mean, obviously you say, mate, he's up at the wrong weight. This guy does look good actually. I know he's one of Dillian White's lads, isn't he?
Yeah.
Did you see him eating last night? He must have been eating for about 3 hours during that card. Jesus, man, he never stopped eating. He's
going to come in looking the shape he was in the VAC fight, isn't he?
Oh aye. Some good beef he was eating there, by the way. Yeah, it was a savage ending and stuff. So yeah, I mean, decent wee scrap. But Villali needs, well, not at this point. He's journeyman status now, isn't he? He's not going to go back down to cruiserweight. I don't think he's really taking it seriously. Actually, I mean, was it 5? No, he ended up doing a pay-per-view card actually very early in his career, and there was a lot of kind of like type hype for him and stuff like that.
I thought Maurice Bradis, didn't he? And he went for Bradis. He really had a good go.
And it just all kind of like fell away. But was that no kind of 8-rounder he fought Bradis in?
Yeah, I think it was prior to Bradis fighting in the... What was Bradis being lined up for? They were keeping Bradis sweet before Bellew and the WBC title, wasn't it?
That's what situation. It was. Bellew, aye. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, Villali's, as I say, mate, journeyman status as far as I'm concerned, unless he takes it seriously and that, get himself back down in weight. It's basically he's going to be cannon fodder for some of these young fighters and stuff. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens with the other young heavyweight Bradley. But the other one as well, actually, that bloody knockout was fucking savage. Actually, that one. Did you call him?
Oh, Dalton Smith.
Oh, dearie me, man, kid was fucking badly knocked out. Like,
yeah, it was a great right hand. That was. He looks like could be one to watch. 6-0 now, 5 knockouts off the Sheffield. Isn't it the EIS amateur? And I was saying to Ames again earlier, the fact that they put him where they did on the card after Gil Bellotti shows that they must wanted to put Smith out there. They maybe have high hopes for him. Right, Gabe, let's move on to the American card then, shall we? I don't know if you saw this one, USA Showtime. First victim of COVID, as Highguard Plodder was saying. It was supposed to be Angelo Leo, 19-0, going in for the vacant WBO Super Bantamweight title. The fact that the WBO title was being fought not on a top rank or Frank Warren card was pretty much noteworthy in my book. Anyway, Stephen Fulton tested positive. Tremaine Williams jumped in. He was 19-0 as well. It looked like a good fight on paper. Don Ackerman, 117-111. Glenn Feldman, 118-110. The esteemed Dom Trella Senior, 118-110, all in favour of Angelo Leo. Me and Andy were talking, Gabe, off the air. We really did try. We got to round 6 and had to ditch this. It was pretty dire stuff. Did you catch Leo against Tremaine Williams?
Yeah, I actually made myself sit through the whole 12 rounds of that shit. I mean, it was, like you said, it was good on paper, again, but the practice of it actually just didn't fall through. So I'd seen Tremaine Williams. I think he was on the undercard of some of the zone stuff. I feel like does anyone else feel like a dumbass when you say the zone? Like, who the fuck talks that way? No, sorry, just a little side rant there. So anyway, whenever I was watching, I think I've seen him before on some of the zone stuff, or maybe I don't believe he was on PBC stuff before.
It was on the Ramirez Hooker card, mate.
There you go. And there was. I had three other fights of him on my hard drive that I know I've seen. I can't remember what they looked like, but Tremaine is solid. He's been to this point in his career a pretty solid fighter. Obviously, he's going in undefeated, so he's had 19, 20 fights without taking a loss. So that's a positive sign. But he went in and he was just standing right in front of Leo and trying to counterpunch, but he didn't, I don't think, count on the activity being as much. So the early rounds, Leo would throw punches a little bit too far out or just a little bit off of target, and Tremaine would catch him, and obviously using the left-hand counter shot because he's a southpaw. So he would catch him with a good left counter occasionally, but it just kind of wasn't really the best show because you had one guy standing there and then the other guy making the action. But then Leo really kind of went to Abnormales mode and was just lunging in, tying up, throwing punches, just swinging away like a wild man. It was really sloppy. It was really not that much fun to watch at all. You'd think Tremaine Williams would have been a little bit more active given that it was a fight for a title, but he was just kind of content to stand too often and watch what was happening. I think he definitely needed to lead more, but then again, Leo was not outstanding either because he was so wild. I mean, it just kind of reminded me of young Abnormales where he was leading with his head and throw punches to the body, most of the time landing low. I mean, there was a number of times where he could have been warned for hitting low blows on the hips, borderline on the thigh. He did get warned once that I recall. Just not a very fun overall fight. And I don't know that it was necessarily because the two fighters are bad. I think it was just kind of a bad matchup and maybe bad preparation on the part of Tremaine Williams. I don't think he seemed as prepared as I'd like to have seen for a guy. But then again, when you're talking about stepping in on a couple days' notice, there's not really a whole lot you can do. But fair play. They had a reserve. The fight went on. We got a world title fight. Not that it was in the grand scheme of things the most meaningful. And then the other two fights on the undercard, let's see. One was a rematch. Jesus Christ, I can't think of who it was now. You got the name, Steve-O?
Yes, we do. We have super bantamweight Reis Alim defeated Marcus Bates by knockout. I think the rematch was possibly Joseph George at light heavyweight against Marcus Escudero.
Yep, that was it. So last time Escudero won handily. George was against the ropes the whole goddamn fight, and Escudero was teeing off on him.
I'm going to have to dispute this, Gabe. Sorry, I don't know the details, but Escudero came in with a loss, but George didn't. So.
Yep, absolutely. So Escudero won that fight though. He was throwing, George was laying ropes, and he was throwing 5-6 punch combinations and sneaking one or two in. You know, it's kind of like a lot of those old classic trainers might say. If you're throwing combinations, you're not throwing to get every punch landed. If you can, that's phenomenal. But a lot of times you're throwing punches to create an opening, and that's exactly what Escudero did last time. And to me, I remember that fight. He handily won the fight, but he got jobbed on the cards pretty badly, I thought. So this time George came in and left no doubt about it. Nice, clean uppercut, a left-hand uppercut as Escudero was coming in. And I, again, had Escudero winning the fight going late. I thought if he stood up and, didn't have any major issues, he was going to win the fight. But George gets credit. He leaned to his left, then came up with a nice left uppercut and starts Escudero, and Escudero went down. He was already out before he hit the canvas. But then I think the thing that made it even worse was the back of his head just boom. You could hear it a lot worse because there weren't fans and all those things in the arena. But that was honestly the most fun fight on the card because it was a lot of action from Escudero. George, whenever he did throw, he was throwing good hard punches, and he landed a few of them. So that was good. But then the lean fight wasn't. It was kind of nondescript. His opponent quit because something happened to his elbow, I guess. I don't know. I kind of quit paying attention about halfway through that one because it was just seemed a little bit of a mismatch on that one. But overall, I mean, it was a night of boxing. Not the greatest boxing, but it was there. So I was kind of happy just to have something to watch whenever I got home today.
Yeah, things starting to heat up again. I've had a few messages in, which I'll pass on to you guys, thanking us now that the boxing's coming back for keeping things ticking during the lockdown. It was like dragging a corpse along on the back of a cart some of the evenings, but we managed to get through it. Joseph Kennedy says Fulton beats Leo if that one happens next. I agree. I actually rate Fulton. I think he looks pretty decent, especially to the body. I think he will beat Leo. A brief word on Tennyson as well, something that came to mind. As I said, the Patera fight makes sense for me. They were talking about Jorge Linares. Everyone knows I'm a massive Linares fan. This might sound like a strange thing to say. Talent-wise, the leagues apart, but Linares, because he cuts and he gets dragged into things and he can get caught, and Tennyson being a puncher, I would not be at all surprised if that fight were to happen, if Tennyson were to catch him and get rid of him, because he's so vulnerable, Linares. He could outbox you or he could get stopped. That said, that fight won't happen. Linares is coming towards the end of his career. I think he's looking a few big paydays and he'll be the hell out of here. I don't see him fighting James Tennyson, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Tennyson would take it. Moving on, Rob, question from Joe Kennedy, the aforementioned, over on patreon.com/boxing asylum. Who's got the best jab in boxing today, says Joe. I like Caleb Plants. He starts it low, so can go to head or body and can turn it over into a lead hook. Who's got the best jab in boxing today, Rob?
I don't know. Good question.
I've got a few. If you want me to throw them in while you're thinking,
give us a few suggestions there. It's not something really I kind of pay too much attention. Like, it was the best jabber or right hander in current.
Yeah, if we're going into history and stuff, obviously you see guys like Larry Holmes, Arguello, all these type of fellas, Tommy Hearns, and you say, they've got the best one. But at the moment, I think David Benavidez, I'm liking his jab. That's quite the weapon. Gennady Golovkin is the obvious one. Even though he's getting on a bit, that was one hell of a jab coming up. Sergei Kovalev, again, will he ever fight again? Shot to bits. That lazy, thumping jab, especially against B-Hop, I think was definitely world class. Rigondo, nice little sneaky southpaw jab as well. The Charlo brothers came to mind. And also, shout out to Mikey Garcia.
Mikey Garcia, brilliant. Everything off the jab. Mikey's probably the textbook-wise, he's probably the one, even though it pains me to say that, considering the way his career has ever panned out for the last 5 years. But when he was on the up, certainly when he was beating Orlando Toledo and those guys, everything is off the jab. He's so accurate, such a sharp shooter, straight punches, brilliant feet. So yeah, he's good. Spence is pretty good with the jab as well. I've seen him breaking fellas down with the jab and doing some setting up the body work quite well.
Crawford as well.
Crawford's decent on the jab. Golovkin, as I said, was brilliant with the jab. His jab was brilliant. It was almost if you couldn't take the jab away from him, you had absolutely no shot of beating him, because he's just going to break it down with it. So
it was like a power punch, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The night against Lemieux kind of just showed, like, he was. I think people kind of thought he was going to go to war with Lemieux, and he just said to himself, "I'm just going to put this guy on the end of the stick all night long," like, and just broke him down with the jab. It was something to behold, that performance from Golovkin. So he was brilliant on the jab. Floyd was good on the jab, but anyone with good fundamentals normally is pretty good on the jab. I can't kind of single guys out. If you don't have a good jab anyway, I don't really know what you're doing in.
Yeah.
Kind of the fucking main point.
A lot of people don't utilise it, do they? Like, look at someone like Callum Smith coming up. He used to have a good jab, but I think he sort of let it slip against Ryder. He wasn't able to implement it.
Yeah, it's kind of gets overlooked. You can win a fight off the jab alone if you can implement it on the night against somebody else's style. But then I think fighters get a little bit hesitant with it. With that, you can leave yourself open if you don't fully commit, and you can pull with it a little bit. But it's kind of, styles change a little bit. You see variations of styles in different eras, and maybe this is the era where the jab is not kind of celebrated as much. But definitely, Golovkin, the last of the big straight jabbers for me in the middleweight division, really, really good. But yeah, like I said, everything should come off the jab anyway if you're doing it right. But what the fuck do I know?
What does Rob know, indeed? Porky's Corner's thrown in Dubois, Andy, just to bring you in, Estrada as well. I think that the jab is such a good weapon, because it's an offensive and a defensive weapon. Offensively, your shots come off the jab, you throw the jab, the right hand comes off it, left hook. And also defensively, if you're throwing a good jab, not a single jab because it can be countered, but if you're throwing them in 2s and 3s, obviously this is basic training, what we got taught whenever we started boxing, figuring out, 30 odd years ago now. If you're throwing that jab, it offsets the opponent, because they're obviously trying to get out the way of it. It's stopping them from planting their feet. You're moving, jab, jab, jab. They're not able to launch their own attacks. So it's such a good offensive and defensive weapon.
Aye, as it says as well, as you always kind of go out straight line as well and get your chin tucked down, your chin tucked down, just kind of like behind the shoulder, and that as you fucking through it. But Ken, what I used to hate the southpaws, man. I just could not figure them out. I always used to stand on their feet. They stood on my feet. So I was kind of pawing at them and stuff like that because it was just so close. You were trying to paw the hand down, maybe try and get a right hand in and stuff. It was just a fucking nightmare. You asking me who I think who are great jabbers currently? I mean, you mentioned them all, like. But you say, yep. I mean, it's just like everything else, man. It's a basic weapon. It's the first thing you get taught. If you master it, just like a lot of fighters. Golovkin. I mean, Golovkin isn't like Razmataz, is he? He's got that Eastern European style. I mean, if you look at music a little bit, I mean, he's different because he dances, but he uses a jab in that as well. He kind of uses it like as a defensive weapon. So if a guy comes up, Matt, he just puts it out there and he kind of moves off. Golovkin's is just like a trip hammer in it when it shows it. The thing is, he can actually kind of like when he goes to throw a jab, that he can then all of a sudden like mid trajectory just like turn it into a kind of like an arcing left hook like he did against Rubio, for example. It's who else? Gonzalez is okay. He's got a decent jab. He kind of if you look at Gonzalez in his prime, actually, he used to kind of like dart in a kind of L shape. Or he used to kind of come out in an L shape actually. Who else?
I throw in Andy, the lesser spotted Billy Joe Saunders. I think, especially against Eubank, he has a nice jab.
Dare I say Andrade? I mean, that's all he is. He's just a boxer, isn't it? I mean, he throws a jab and that. I'll probably keep a wee eye out, see what Hergovich does in that, because he's obviously going to have to utilise the jab in that as well. But as he's 6'6", he's no. I think he's a very, very basic fighter, so he's going to have to kind of make the basics very, very well, and that's why you have to have a great jab. And that, cause I just don't see him being. I just don't see him as all that. I'm not seeing it yet, and I think he might come unstuck in that as he goes up in levels. And that I've got to see him tested. So, and if he does go up in levels, I think he's going to have to kind of like adopt a good jab. And that rather than just kind of step in there and just throwing well shots. I just think he's too square, so I like to see him kind of like work on a few things and stuff, tighten up a wee bit. What I did notice actually, did you notice Lyndon Arthur, his jab on Friday night and that well low down, but with like when he goes to throw it and that, he would then kind of like throw the jab, step in with a right hand and kind of like back off, throw another right hand and then kind of like go for the jab, but then turn it into a kind of left uppercut on the back foot.
Yeah. Through a little else, Arthur. We'll talk about him soon. Wait till Ozzy gets on, I think. Any from you, Gabe? Any jabbers you want to give a shout out to?
Sorry, I couldn't get my mouse to work. No, I think you guys have mentioned some of the ones.
Spear jab, Gabe. We need to talk about the spear jab for about 20 minutes. Remember the spear jab, Steve?
Yes, Sebastian. Do you not remember when Seb did the big jab thing and Kurt put it to the music?
What fight was that for? Was that Ward against Golovkin?
Kovalev Ward 1, yeah.
All right.
Shit, I forgot about that. But he has such a like fucking detailed thought about stuff. You know what I mean? Like like whenever a lot of people watch stuff, it's really kind of a simplistic idea, and a lot of people don't know all the nuances of all the different jabs. I mean, I would even fall into that category. There's so many different ways that you can use a jab and things of that nature that it doesn't really. I mean, like he's a very detailed person. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny thinking back about that.
We should get him back on, Gabe. The fans are calling for it here.
I'll hit him up and see if I can get him to come on. But his knowledge of stuff is so, I don't know, it's so much different than a lot of people because, like I said, it's so detailed and he has such a way of remembering things that to me just kind of fly out the window. Some of these things I'm seeing.
Well, Rain Man.
So give him a second notice, I
will say one thing. I think he still listens, and for all of his faults, people didn't like him and stuff. He knew his boxing. The guy knew his boxing. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, I love Seb. I still talk to him pretty consistently. Definitely a knowledgeable guy. And, I always enjoy talking with him about the fights that are happening and what we're seeing going on because it's like I'm seeing something, but then you have him and he's kind of got a little bit different thought about exactly what it is that someone else is seeing. We kind of we kind of have a lot of similar taste in terms of fighters that we tend to like and dislike. There are a few, that we will never agree on, but we have a pretty similar taste in the things that we like to see and kind of what we expect to see from certain fighters. So I always do enjoy talking to Seb. Definitely a good buddy and someone I enjoy chatting with. But back to the topic, I don't think there's a whole lot of people that I have on my list of good jabs. I was watching a lot of my super flyweights and flyweights over the last couple of weeks in preparation for the super flyweight tournament and the flyweight tournaments, because there's so many. Oh God, there's so many great names on those lists, and I was talking to Andy about this just shortly ago in the Twitter, and there's so many great fighters that it's hard to separate. Like, do I want to put a great fighter in, someone that was historically kind of great? Because they're good and they'll have a good matchup, or do I want to put somebody like, I know most people don't share my affinity for Vic Darchinyan, but if you talk about a jab, when he used his, it was a great setup, and whenever it landed him, it was good and stiff, and it could allow him to open up with that funky delivered left hand. I mean, he was like a fucking baseball pitcher. He had so many different deliveries, and you never really knew where the left hand was coming from. It could be some wild-ass uppercut. It could be some weird over-the-top. It could be sometimes right down the pipe and just bash you right in the face. And the thing was, people knew it was coming. And it wasn't until he aged much higher before that stopped being effective. But there were points where he would use his jab to great effect and open those things up. And so I think of a jab as being an all-around tool. You have guys that could jab, and their jab would be beautiful and a weapon on its own. But then a lot of times you have other guys who can use that jab and use it as a setup tool or as a blinder or whatever it is you want to kind of call it. And that effect of that was maybe on par with a great effective jabber. I think Errol Spence is probably my favorite jab right now. Assuming he comes back and he's in good shape, that should remain the same. But I know Rob went with Mikey Garcia, another great jabber. I've often accused Mikey of being a little bit lackluster and not as much fun because of how much he jabs. Like, I feel like he has the power and the ability to open things up and work off of his jab, but sometimes he's really content just to use that jab as its own weapon. Which, I mean, it's tremendous. You got to give it to him. It's tremendous. I'm not a big Mikey Garcia fan, but his jab is definitely, I would say, one of the premier ones in boxing at this particular point.
Yeah, just moving on from this topic, James Tapner says Dean Francis had a quality jab. Obviously, the late Dean Francis, he had shoulder problems like myself. I ended up having a shoulder operation. I wasn't quite as good as Dean Francis, but I tell you what, some pain, and he just had operation after operation after operation to try and get back in the ring. Just didn't work out for him. It's a sad story. Dean Francis, one hell of a fighter back in the day. Shout out to everybody who's appeared in the chat. Josh Foster's there. Saw Don McNamara knocking about as well. John Wayne. Shout out to Russ, Sloan Kettering, and Fuzzy Dunlop says Kell Brook has an underrated jab. The lackluster career overshadows his skills. Very good textbook boxer. Yeah, wouldn't disagree with any of that. It makes it even more frustrating, Fuzzy Dunlop, as to what Kell Brook has done or hasn't done with his career. You're listening to episode 384 of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse podcast. Rapping Rob Kelly's just disappeared. He's going literally out into the fields. Andy and Gabe are still with us at the moment, waiting for Ozzy to jump on. No guest tonight. Right, boys, let's get on to this question from Rick Law. He asked me last week if we could throw in some Don King stories. The geezer fascinates me, says Rick Law. No one seems to have a good word to say about him as a man, but everyone respects him as a promoter. Absolutely. I think he's a bit of a scumbag. But if you compare the pay-per-views that Don used to put it back in the day, in the 80s and especially the 90s, and compare some of the stuff we see now, you sell your soul with the devil with Don King, but he would make good fights. If any of the boys want to throw in any Don King stories, feel free. Just before you do so, I know there's the old Vladimir and Vitaly Klitschko one with the piano. I'm going to throw one in here. I'd heard it years ago. I'd read it in a book years ago, but I couldn't find it. But eventually I went over to a website called complex.com. I don't know if you've heard this one, Andy, but back in 1972, I'll just read it verbatim because the writer has written it as well as I can explain it. Don King organised a charity boxing match featuring Muhammad Ali to benefit the Forest City Hospital, an underfunded care centre outside of King's hometown of Cleveland. On the surface of it sounds like a pretty good moment for the boxing promoter until you look at the books. On an episode of the ESPN series Sports Century, Don Elbaum, a fellow boxing promoter, alleged that of the $85,000 the event made in ticket sales, the hospital only received $1,500. An absurd 83% of the purse was pretty much a standard cut for King, but that's grimy as hell when you're working for a charity. So Don puts on an event, Andy, makes $85,000 for the hospital. Once he's cut out his 83%, they end up with $1,500. Classic King.
Some man. Yeah, I mean, he was. I tell you what, actually, just off the back of it, I would recommend everyone to buy the book, or if you can get a copy of it, called The Life and Crimes of Don King, Shame of Boxing in America. It's written by Jack Newfield and stuff like that, and he's had access to all his crime reports and stuff, FBI reports. He's got testimony from fighters that he's meant to have, bumped off and all that sort of stuff. He's threatened fighters to be killed and stuff. I think he had, have Larry Holmes threatened to have his knees broken and stuff before he even got into the ring if he hadn't signed the contract and stuff. Saying all that, this is a very shrewd man, very, very good operator. Great operator. Problem is, he was a fucking criminal. He was a crook. Plus, he was a murderer twice. First time was, I think it was justifiable homicide, but the second time, I think it was like for a few $100s. It was so King walks into I don't know if it was like a kind of like pool shop over as it is. He just like pulls the guy out in the street, starts pistol whipping him and kicking the absolute shit out of him and stuff. And then the end, end up dying in the street and stuff. Forget how many years ago, but didn't do the full time. What other stories we got? There was one, I don't know if it's true or no, but they did say that Ali and Foreman apparently received the same amount of money for the Rumble in the Jungle, but he actually kind of promised them that the other fighter was actually getting 5, or who they were getting 10 or something like that.
He screwed Witherspoon over as well, didn't he? Tim Witherspoon told him he was getting $1 million or something and give him $100,000 in a suitcase and told him to fuck off. Dragged him through the courts for 5 years. Elite.
One of the best ones, one of the best stories. If you've not watched the Klitschko documentary, it came out, I think it was about 5 years ago, and it's fantastic. It was a fantastic story that Vitaly mentioned, right? So they were turning pro and they were trying to figure out which promoter to go with, and that. Obviously, they went with Universum in the end, but they got invited to Don King's house. So Don King's talking to him, razzmatazz and all that sort of shit, having one of these suave fuckers that you ate and all that sort of stuff. He says, "Gentlemen," something along the lines of, "What tune do you like?" or whatever, and that. I kind of mind. Give me some sort of Russian classical song that you remember and what you love, and that. King says, "I know that song." What does he go and do? He goes over to the piano and starts playing the fucking tune, right? So Vitaly starts kind of like wandering about the house, having a look while the music's playing in the background and that. He's looking at the pictures on the wall. Just saunters over, has a quick look over at Don King. Notices he's not playing the piano. It's actually a kind of like a tune box. So he pumps in the fucking tune, and the fucking the piano keys start moving as if like somebody's fucking playing it, Things like that just to kind of like impress him. So everything and anything he would do, he would use you race. He would use the N word just to promote something, just to kind of like antagonize the situation, just to get more people talking about it, buying tickets, pay-per-views and stuff like that. Anything and everything there was no off limits with him and stuff. He took it to the next level, and to be honest, Bob Arum, fair play to them as well, is because you've got the situation with Hearn and Hearn and Frank Warren just now. They can't do business. These guys hated each other back in the day, pure proper hatred. But in the end, they still came together from time to time to make fights and stuff. And Don King will say, be honest with you, and so will Bob Arum, they made each other better. They wanted to beat the other guy because he had X-Fighter, he had Ali, so he wanted Ali and all that sort of stuff. And King would try anything. I mean, look at the story about Mike Tyson making the move at fucking, who was it? Cuss's funeral, trying to step in there, trying to kind of get into Tyson, or I don't know if it was maybe Jimmy Jacobs or whoever it was, but he was really, he used everything possible. James Douglas, for example, there was a story about him. He was like, remember about the situation about the title? He'd been on the ground for like 15 seconds and stuff, like the long count for the Tyson fight. Trying to use that to try and get the kind of the result reversed and all that sort of stuff. Everything. He tried it all. He got the women for the fighters and stuff like that as well. No problem at all to Don King. He knew everybody. He knew other tricks. Invented most of them himself.
Absolute character.
Worth noting as well about Don King that he beat a murder trial and he beat the IRS, which is very difficult to do for a black man in America. You know what I mean? Even as much as he said Aram had the complexion for the protection, Don King was fucking bulletproof, man. You beat a murder charge and the IRS. Oh, okay, all right.
Hey, that is the real
No,
Teflon
Rob, you're
Don.
dead right, man. It's not often that any American beats the fucking IRS, but hand it to Don King, like you said, a black man beating the IRS as well. That doesn't fucking happen. Like, the IRS is not going to let anyone win. Very rarely do they lose shit. And then you got fucking Don King, legendary. I liked what Eddie was talking about with his, battles with Bob Arum and promoting and stuff. There was an article, it was some time ago in ESPN, and I think they included a video with it. I'll dig it out and see if I can find it later on and tweet that out. But they were talking about it, and Don King gets like, kind of wound up, and he's talking about how Bob Arum ripped his jacket off or stole his jacket or ripped his jacket or tore it, whatever, and saying how he was still waiting for Bob Arum to pay him back for the jacket, some such nonsense. I mean, Don King was the ultimate showman as a promoter. He's to me everything that Bob Arum really isn't. You see the interviews with Arum, and he'll tell stories and good stuff like that. But I don't ever remember seeing Arum in the thick of it like you always saw Don King. Don King always had his shit in the middle of everything that was happening, and you guys have already mentioned it, antagonizing people and causing all kinds of hell. So that's the way I always think of him.
Just before you come back in, Andy, I have another Don King story here. It's from 1976. So in the wake of the 1976 US Olympic team winning 5 gold medals, Don King pitched ABC on the idea of a televised national boxing tournament. In order to bolster the prestige of his event, King allegedly paid the Ring magazine, which was an authority on boxing at the time, to falsify the track records and rankings of tournament participants. The controversial tournament became toxic when one of the tournament fighters informed the media that the tournament was indeed rigged for those who had contractual ties to King. He would go on to explain that he was told he'd lost his next fight before even arriving at the venue. More boxers would then come forward with allegations of payoffs, leading ABC to cancel the tournament.
I remember that one because I think they did not hold one of the fights on an aircraft carrier or something like that. I'm sure. I mean, on the actual deck, I'm certain they did. He stole money for Larry Holmes and that as well. Something like 300,000 for he got short change for the Jerry Cooney fight. Holmes sued naturally. He's got ties to John Gotti, who actually stepped in and killed like the big boss of the Colombo family. What's his name? Big Polly. He stepped in there and fucking shot him and his chief capo or something like that. There's another story as well. As he'd actually went to Ali was in the hospital, I think it was, for after a fight. I don't know if it was the Frazier third fight or whatever it was. And there was something like, I think he'd like Ali claiming something like he was £1 million short or whatever than that. So
$1.2 million, yeah.
Was it something like that? And apparently, like King had went into the hospital with like something like I don't know how much it was. It wasn't even 100 grand. I don't think it was
50 grand. He hoodwinked him in there, didn't it, to taking it?
Did he?
Yeah.
And what happened with the lawsuit?
I think he said as a condition of accepting the gift, Ali would have to sign papers to drop the lawsuit. And because Ali was in hospital and the dazed or whatever after the fight, he sort of agreed to drop the lawsuit and take the cash because, the whole here's hard cash. I might not get anything else out of him. You open up the suitcase, there's all the dollar bills, that type of effect. There was only 50 grand in there. So he got him to sign away $1 million lawsuit.
It's unbelievable, because the thing is, Ali was basically on his arse. He had no money, and I remember Gene Kilroy was mentioned on the BBC podcast, and that, like, when he came in as his manager and stuff, they actually had to kind of like give up like 20% of his image rights to try and get some cash in and stuff, and that's how they try to kind of get him back on his feet and stuff like financially. But King, as I say, King robbed everybody, man. Everything. I mean, his son.
Good clip on YouTube of him and Tyson sitting together in some garden. I don't know what the fight is. It's late 80s anyway. It must be when the relationship is getting frayed. And Mike goes to quit the interview, they're off camera, and King goes to put his arm on him to hold him, like to stop him from going. Tyson just pulls his arm away. He's like, "Get the fuck off me, you scumbag!" Tom's just smiling still, waving the American flag, just smiling.
remember the story as well as I remember McClellan coming out to fight Ben, and he was pissed off McClellan apparently because he found out he was only getting something like 80,000 for the Ben fight. And I think as well, as I was going to say, his son, it's not Charles. Don King's stepson. Carl King. I think he was always kind of signed on as a fighter's manager.
That's right.
So he was getting his 25%. Don was getting whatever fucking percentage. He was on probably 25, 30% and that. Before the fighter knew where he was and that.
That's how they got around the Ali Act, wasn't it? The promotional and manager conflict.
And then that's obviously then the kid's got to pay tax on top of that. That's well of a fucking. And then he's got his team to pay off the back end of that as well. So he's lucky if he's walking with 30% of his purse, maybe. You know. So the Witherspoon got robbed. Ali,
Eldrick Taylor.
Eldrick Taylor apparently got stiffed. McClellan obviously as well. You know, I mean, Jesus Christ. You know, look what they try to do to Douglas and that as well. You know, the Holyfield fight against Lewis. I'm sure he was fucking involved in that, but he had to be. He fucking had to be involved in that, and I'm just. Well, I don't know, but I'm sure there's a bit of money involved there with fucking mafia, like, because it was just so naturally clear that Lewis won that fucking first fight, far clearer than he did the rematch. But fuck me, man, he still hosed him. Yeah, it was just fucking disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely madman. Tried to take out a hit on Eldrick Taylor, apparently. Let us move on then, shall we, gentlemen? Just before we go on to the... no, it wasn't Poonswat. What do you call him? Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. We'll go to that shortly, Andy. Just before we do so, rapping Rob Kelly, question for you from Liam Jordan. He says, "Hi, Rob. Hope you and the boys are good. Question for the podcast. What was the first fight you ever watched, and was it good? Also, which fight do you most rewatch?" Now, Liam threw his in. The first fight he ever watched was Naz versus Robinson, and Naz versus Kelly is the one that he goes back and rewatches often, Rob.
Watch that back pretty often myself. That was a cracker fight, Kevin Kelly and Naz, highly anticipated at the time as well. I'm trying to put a date on the first fight. I'm going to think I remember clearly, so it depends whatever one comes first, but I definitely have memories of being just like even younger than my little one now, like only like 6, maybe 7, watching fights with me dad. So I definitely watched Holmes Spinks 2, and I watched McGuigan Pedroza. So whichever one of those came first, that's an early enough boxing memory. And then by the time Hagler, Leonard and all, and Tyson and Berbick came around, I was fully invested. But Tyson Berbick, I suppose, piqued the interest. There was a boxing book, I said before, that got me interested in it. But then when Tyson came around, you know, everybody was Tyson, and McGuigan before that was a superstar here. But I'm going to say those two fights. So whichever one of those came first, the Holmes Spinks rematch or McGuigan Pedroza was the first fight I watched. And to go back to countless fights, it's almost cliche at this stage, but Castillo, Corrales, I go back to that quite a lot. I like James Toney, Girov. That's a good one to go back to. Roy Jones,
especially
James
for
Toney,
Manny on the mic.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, and you know, of course, the classics. But different fights. I could go back to, like I said before. I think I said on this fight, I go back to fights that I saw on undercards when I was 10, and had them on VHSs, and then go back on YouTube and watch them. Robert Bam Bam Hines versus Matthew Hilton of Canada. That was on the undercard of Thomas Hearns versus, I think, Nate Tate maybe, or something like that, back in '89, something like that. That's a cracker of a fight. So I could watch anything. I could watch fights from fucking the black and white days. I could be watching fights from the early '90s. I could be watching anything. But favorite fighters to kind of go back and rewatch. I like watching Jones. I like watching Toney. I like watching Chavez. I like watching Morales, Barrera, stuff like that. Like, so, yeah, pretty much anything. But the early fights, it's either Spinks, Holmes 2, or McGuigan Pedroza, whichever one came first.
Let me clear that up for you right now, rapping Rob Kelly. On June the 8th, 1985, was McGuigan against Pedroza. Just over 3 months later, on September the 21st, 1985, was Spinks against Holmes. So there you go.
There you go. Argument settled. There you go. 85. Oh. So, and in all that time watching fights, I probably know less now even than I did at the start. So that's just goes to tell. Goes to show you what the fuck do I know.
Any you want to throw in there, Andy? First fight you watched, was it any good? And then the fight you most rewatched. I'll throw mine in first of all. So the first one I can remember really, I think it was 91. shown on ITV, the first fight between Michael Watson and Chris Eubank. We were all in the playground on Monday morning pretending we were either Watson or Eubank. I think Watson got stiffed. It was on the Friday night, and ITV showed it, and it was quite good viewing figures. That's the one I remember. Ones I go back and watch. One fighter I often go back and watch is Matthew Saad Mohammed, especially his fights against the likes of Marvin Johnson and Richie Cates and all them type of things. What about you, Andy?
Earliest memory, it's definitely Frank Bruno. I think it was either, I don't think it was either Tillis or Witherspoon, but I think I'm definitely too young for one of them. But I clearly remember the first fight against Tyson and Bruno. So that would be what, 89. So maybe about
89. That was, yeah.
89. Aye, because it says Tyson was like the person coming up. I remember my granddad and that talking about my stuff. This guy coming to America and that's destroying everybody. That is the first clear memory that I can think of and stuff. Because as I say, I always remember when Tyson got sent down, I was like 10 or something at the time. And when I heard it on the news and stuff, I remember clearly asking my mom, Mom, what's rape? And she's like, fucking sitting there.
Bet she was glad you come to her that one.
No, I was like, what is that? She's like, what are you been watching? This is Tyson on the telly. And fucking, I was like, oh. So that was my introduction to that story. When I go back and watch what fighters I go back and watch regularly and stuff, probably Sanchez. Duran's obviously a given, but I like to go back and watch Sanchez against Pat Ford, Sanchez against Gomez. I do like Zuma Nelson against Wilfredo Gomez as well. That's a really good fight. In terms of heavyweights and stuff, I will go back and watch a bit of Joe Lewis from time to time. Ali, I've really got to be in the mood for him sometimes because Ali could, especially in his second career, and that it really depend on the opposition he was fighting. He could just play to the opponent, or he could be bang in the mood for it. It was either or. Tommy Hearns, I like to watch Tommy Hearns back from time to time, and that just for that fucking knockout power. And just like general, I try and kind of like go back and watch some kind of like just whatever comes up on the trackers and that, Steve, as well. Just like old kind of like 80s fights and stuff, like whatever way it is, and that maybe like an old, like maybe I don't know, Helmer Kenty, or I don't know. I tell you what, I watched the other night. I watched Aram Bartley against Robbie Sims, for example. That was a very green. But I think Bartley was 9-0 and 1 draw. Sims would be something like maybe 19 fights into his career, and that. I think Bartley got stopped. I think it was maybe halfway through that fight he got stopped. So I like to kind of go back and watch the kind of middleweights, cruiserweights as well. I like to go back and watch like some maybe like Vidalchik against Cunningham, the Huck Afolabi fights and that as well for time to time. They're really good. Good wars. Trying to think what else. Bredis against Duradolo is decent. Aye. Trying to think what else.
And back in the day as well, Andy, when things weren't as easy to come by, I remember it would have been 1992, thinking back, going to my nan's, and she had the newspaper lying around and opening it up, and on the second page there was a big 2-page spread. Lennox Lewis had just knocked out Donovan Razor Ruddock, and this was a big deal because obviously he was nailed on for a WBC title shot. He'd made a massive statement knocking out Ruddock in the second round, and it was a big thing. It was a big report back then.
It was. I say, well, pretty much like yourself, mate, because I used to go like my Uncle Pet's house with my granny and that, who would like go and like tidy up his house like every like 3 or 4 months and stuff, kind of like spring clean it and that, or bring along, do some decorating that. You'd have like a big pile of boxing magazines and stuff, like the Boxing News, when it was like that flimsy kind of yellow paper and that.
Yeah.
Maybe like something like 8-10 pages into stuff.
It was like the Times, wasn't it? You used to throw it right out.
Christ's sake, man. So it was a kind of like a weekly or a kind of local newspaper. That's what the Box News used to be, and that's used to kind of sit there and read all the reports. That mainly amateur stuff. He was into that because obviously all the amateur shows were all locals and stuff. Especially when you had like say where we came from as minors, and that you had like the National Cold Board Championships. Obviously they kind of died away towards the 60s and stuff, but you still had like say all these mining towns or villages and stuff like that who had like the old heritage of fighting and boxing and stuff. So they'd always kind of like say, talking about it or going away to watch it and that, look-ins at the pubs and that type of thing and that, so there was always that kind of like interest in it round about our way. Obviously as well with Frankie going on to win the British flyweight title and that as well, was there always that kind of legacy Jimmy Coyle and that as well, kind of like challenging for the British. So that was kind of local lads to us and stuff. Obviously, the Jack Dormer, who was a top amateur back in the 50s and 60s and stuff. So, guys like that. But that was the kind of guys we kind of like heard about and stuff. So you're reading like boxing news magazines and stuff for the old days. That kind of format, that paper tape went right on in the 90s, I'm sure as well, didn't they?
Oh, and beyond. I think early 2000s it was still like that.
I remember it's funny that you say that actually about being a kid, because I remember my dad was good mates with Jem Roach's grandson, who fought for a heavyweight world title, Wexford guy back. Who did he fight? Tommy Burns, and got knocked out in the first round. I remember thinking, when I grow up, I'm going to be the second heavyweight from Wexford to fight for a world title. So I didn't quite fulfill that. I definitely got the heavyweight. I didn't get to fucking challenge for any kind of title.
Yeah, Steve, I just see that Jason saying there about Juan Pablo Hernandez. I didn't know that.
Yeah, just for anybody listening, Jason Chahal says, any thoughts on the reported return of Juan Pablo Hernandez at heavyweight? Good cruiserweight, but must be 36, not boxing years. Well, all I would say, Andy, before you come in, I'd say he's probably older than that. I thought he was very talented in his prime, but he was chinny, so coming back at near 40 at heavyweight probably ain't a good idea.
He's also apparently had hand problems in that as well, and there was also personal issues, for what I recall.
He used to get injured all the time, didn't he?
Definitely hand problems there, but because there was a time he was ring champion for a wee bit, and he beat Cunningham twice.
Beat Cunningham, and then there was like funny circumstances in the rematch, wasn't there? He never head clash or something.
What it was, I think Hernandez dropped Cunningham heavy in one of the fights and stuff. Brother Naz, R.I.P., he tipped out a whole bottle of water in the corner, so it basically delayed the fight because the referee then called for a towel to come in to get the fucking water cleaned up. So it gave Cunningham an extra 5-10 seconds to try and recover, because it was I think he might have got dropped twice in that round. Actually, it was a really heavy knockdown. He got fucking dinged up pretty heavy.
Yeah, he could punch Hernandez. He was skillful and he was fast, but he was a bit weak around the whiskers, I think. But yeah, that'd be interesting comeback for him. Right, what else have we got on the agenda? Do you want to throw anything in, Gabe, on the early fights that you used to watch? One thing I will say, actually, Gabe, maybe I'm a bit of a pussy these days, but I find it difficult to go back and watch fights where you know something bad's happened. Like I was watching the Levander Johnson fight the other night, knowing that obviously he got a brain damage later on and died. And, you know, the Billy Collins, Luis Resto fight, you hear the punches slamming in New York and the commentators referencing it, knowing that Resto obviously has no padding on the gloves. I think it's quite difficult to watch them. But more to the point, Gabe, earliest fight memories and ones that you go back and watch often?
Yeah, I think I don't really watch a lot of the early stuff that I started with. My parents weren't big subscribers to like HBO and those kind of things. And so we had cable, and we had like USA Network, who I remember putting on the, I don't even remember. I know it went through several different like names. It was Monday Night Fights, Tuesday Night Fights. I think it was Wednesday and Thursday Night Fights too. And then of course on ESPN, you had Friday Night Fights. But that was kind of my introduction. So I've always been a pretty avid sports fan. I really don't know why, because no one in my family is a real big sports fan. Like nobody really watches that much. My dad will watch occasionally different events, but baseball, football, all those kind of things are big here in the States. I was always watching them. And so I just kind of naturally fell in line to watch the only sport that comes on Tuesday nights back then, or Monday nights or Wednesday nights or whatever. And it just happened to be boxing. And so that was kind of my thing with some of those early shows during the week. And they weren't a lot of times tremendous matchups. There were some times where you got some big names on some of those cards. But that was kind of my introduction. And for some reason, then from there, I just kind of, for some reason, fell into watching some of the other stuff that they would replay, like on ESPN Classic. Of the big fights, and so I really didn't watch a lot of like major big time matchups whenever I was younger, just because I didn't have HBO, and back then there wasn't the internet readily available that people could just look up and see what was happening. Obviously, there was no fucking podcasts, and then being a boxing fan in Texas is a little bit, I would say it's a little bit unique, because here people love football. We're all about football. We're a football state. And so there just wasn't a lot of focus on those things. And there's, out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere, there's not a lot of gyms that people can go to. And so there was just, I guess on my end, a lack of knowledge of the sport and kind of the things that were happening back in the, in the 90s, the mid 90s, early 90s. But I was just kind of oblivious. I just watched because sometimes you get to see a cool knockout, But as far as what I go back and watch, it's all over the place, really. I think the one fight that I give the most rewatches is going to have to be Morales Barrera 1. That probably is one of my top fights. I think probably over the last 10 years or so, I've really stuck in the lower divisions. So flyweights and super flyweights, those are some of my favorites in the bantamweights. I like learning about a lot of those guys that I didn't see, and kind of learning the history of those divisions. And so naturally, as I learned more, I kind of started paying more attention to what's happening now. And I really find that a lot of those are the fights that I rewatch. Recently, a little bit ago, all those kind of things. I had to kind of stick in the lower weights. They have, to me, the pace is faster, and the punches will never be as hard as a heavyweight punch, but if you extrapolate down, they're just as hard hitting comparative to their size. So people always say, well, they're not as powerful, or they're small, or whatever it is, but they have some awesome fights. And I think that's the reason why you don't see very many guys last long in those light divisions. So without, taking up too much time, as I've already done, I would just say I watch a lot of lower weight guys. Probably my cap really runs to middleweight. Past middleweight, then it gets a little bit more rare for me to rewatch stuff. I will have certain fighters that I'll focus on at a time. So I kind of go, I guess I'm a little bit different maybe than some people. I kind of go like by a specific fighter. So it used to be a little bit easier when you could buy DVDs and that kind of stuff. I know there's still some folks that sell them, but their quality is shit. And you can still find some of those. So I can get career sets and just watch a whole career, which I find really interesting to kind of look at how a guy started off and where he ended up. So those are kind of things that I do. But yeah.
That's what Gabe's doing, everybody. Do it if you wish. Belly of the Week's coming up later. Heavyweight tournament. Shout out to Jim McDonald in the chat. Dropping some content on his channel this week. Jim, nice PowerPoint presentation. Good stuff. Enjoyed it, Jim. Go and give him a like and subscribe. Holt has thrown in a few questions this week for us. I'm trying to save them for Ozzy. Don't know if he's coming on tonight or maybe next week. I'll keep those over. Holt, that's right up Ozzy's street, right in his territory. Talking of territory, Andy, down in Thailand is where you want to be. Wiseksil Wanzet, Wanzek even, known as Sor Rungvisai, got a win over Amnet Ruinrong. It was like 8:45 on a Saturday morning, washing the dishes, watching a bit of Rungvisai, couple of fellas on commentary, never heard them before. I think they did quite well, to be honest with you. Anyway, back to the action in the ring. Sor Rungvisai, how did he look? Did you expect him to do it a little bit easier? I thought the 99-91 was possibly a bit wide.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, obviously, he's not the fight in a while. Rung Rong's, again, I mean, was it up £120? Both guys are over, well, £5 for Rungvisai, but really, Rung Rong should be doing it flyweight. 40-year-old, he was semi-busy, I suppose, early half of the fight, early opening rounds and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if it accidental head clash, that, but it was always a dirty fighter, Rung Rong, anyway. Cut the eyelid of Rungvisai. But yeah, I mean, obviously doing the stretch and stuff, having a wee bit more success, Rungvisai, and kind of kept the kind of work rate going and stuff. But I just think we're looking at a man here now. Actually, well, we need to take the toughness away from him. And that he's faded, I think. And I just think as well, having that year off hasn't really helped him either. And you just wonder with this ongoing situation, that is he going to be getting any kind of biggish fights anytime soon? You've seen I don't know if you've seen the wee preview before the fight, and that Eddie was talking. Just before the commentary or before the walk-ins and stuff, he's kind of like hoping, well, how's it going to work here? They're talking about Gonzalez against Estrada hopefully happening sometime soon. Is it by the end of the year, I think? And then Rungvisai is going to get the winner, hopefully. I think
Rungvisai's sliding over the cliff slightly. He's been inactive as well, hasn't he?
He is, to be honest with you. It says he stepped away from the ring for a wee bit as well because of a personal situation he had at the time and that as well. You just wonder if he's really in it. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, they 2 fights against Gonzalez that he got some, by Thai standards, he got massive money, by the way. You just wonder is maybe, has he still got the stomach for it? As he said, again, 30, was it 32, 33, I think he is?
33, I think.
Yeah. The other thing as well is the Strada rematch would be interesting because he came out fighting him as an orthodox fighter, didn't he? I'm sure he did.
Against Estrada, he did. He was back to Southpaw here, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Aye, so I just I like to see him kind of maybe getting a Estrada rematch and stuff, and just to see if he can right that wrong actually, and just go in there and fight his own fight rather than having to kind of shift stances. I don't know if it was injury related or anything like that. The other thing as well is the Gonzalez third fight. I would be down for it if I was confident Gonzalez winning it, because you know how much I love that wee bastard, but I didn't want to see him get knocked out again, especially off him, because I think he's a far better fighter, I think, than he doesn't deserve another fucking subbish defeat. And I would love it to see him win it. I was surprised as to how good he looked against Yafai, but then you look at Yafai, he's like he wasn't a solid champion. Always maintained the boiled. The only thing that made him relevant was that belt. That's the only reason he stayed at the weight for so long. And now
barely relevant.
Aye,
Yafai, wasn't he? Friggin' hell, who did he fight?
Exactly. So he's going to go up in weight. So you just wonder if that was just a kind of, not so much a false storm, but kind of papered over the cracks of Gonzalez a wee bit as well. You just wonder, but it was a great performance by him. I was glad to see him back, but I still think at this point, Rungvisai might still have a wee bit too much for Gonzalez, but I think it's still a competitive fight. But I want to see Gonzalez against Estrada. Rungvisai should maybe, I don't know what's happening with Quadras these days, maybe a rematch with him. He fought Quadras as well, didn't he?
Yep.
Yep, so maybe a rematch with him, maybe.
Didn't Quadras beat Rungvisai?
I think he did.
Now. And Gonzalez beat Quadras.
Was it on a cut, I think? Or did I get that wrong?
No, I think it might have been on point. I can't remember.
Was it? Right, okay. Yeah, maybe likes to call Quadras that, because I think Estrada and Gonzalez have certainly got unfinished business. Because that's been a long waltz for this rematch. You know what I mean? They were talking about that, 3 years ago? 4 years ago? It was at the time when Inoue was kind of kicking around about the weights and that as well. Then we lost that window. But yeah, I'd like to see that rematch kick off, hopefully by the end of the year, hopefully. So come on, Eddie, step up now and make that part of your fight camp.
Absolutely. Step up, Eduardo. Talking about stepping up, Eddie's Tatley going in for the European title, vacant lightweight title on Saturday the 8th of August against the Italian Gianluca Seglia. Loves a European title, does Tatley. I expect him to get the business done there against the Italian. A few guys in the chat asking for Jason Chukwu. I haven't heard from Chukwu tonight, so I might just play this just to make myself feel better.
I fell asleep.
Bound to have fallen asleep, hasn't he, old Chukwu?
It's great though. It's great when he's not in the chat and that, because he's no messaged us, he's no DM'd us anything yet, and there he's there, fell asleep. It's great, peaceful
with no Chukwu. What should we go on to then? Should we do our little heavyweight tournament? I'm sure Rob's up for it, Andy and Gabe as well. It's a bit of a late one here, but I'm sure you know the guys. Gabe's going to put the super flyweights in next week, actually, but it's better to throw them in the chat during the week so the lads have a chance to watch them, I think. Let's go on to our heavyweights then. So this was sent in from, let me just bring it up here, friend of the pod, James Hart. He messaged me during the week and said, if you're struggling for a tournament idea in the future, which is today, what about 90 to 2000s heavyweight contenders and quote-unquote second-rate champs? So, same old thing. We'll go to you first of all, Rob. 2 minutes or less. So we've got heavyweight contenders and second-rate champs. Some of your favourites are definitely thrown in here, including quarterfinal number 1, which is contested between Corey Sanders and Lamont Brewster. WBO heavyweight title heaven.
What a bum fight. No. Fucking hell, man. I'm going to say Corey Sanders by a knockout.
Yes.
Big overhand right, blows out Lamont Brewster in a fight nobody would ever care about.
Straight left, surely, Rob. Straight left.
Yeah, southpaw, aye.
No, I'm going against the grain. That's how bad Lamont Brewster was. You could knock him out with either hand, I think. No, I don't think he was that bad, but he wasn't great, was he? And Sanders wasn't great either, but tough son of a bitch. I'm going to put him through to the semi-finals in this emphatic lineup.
we go. Let's just type in Corey Sanders. A few upsets. He's obviously now no longer with us. Lamont Brewster, claim to fame. He was once managed by Sam Simon, who was involved with The Simpsons. The chat, it won't let me put a message in the chat. Says it thinks I'm spam. I'm the boss here. What's going on, Andy? Spam. Flipping terrible, isn't it? Banner number 2. Let's have a look. I thought this fight had already taken place in number 2, but I think it is. Ike Ibeabuchi against John Ruiz. I'm thinking of David Tua against John Ruiz and Ike Ibeabuchi against David Tua. Tua is the common opponent. He's not in this tournament, Andy. Number 2 is Ike Ibeabuchi against John Ruiz. I think I might know where this is going.
I've got to go for the Madman, the Presidente.
By knockout, yeah.
By knockout. Yeah. I'll go maybe halfway. 6 rounds, I'll say. Ruiz, I just think he was just a slow plodder, wasn't he? You just think Ibeabuchi was just one of those what-if stories and that, but he's probably, again, maybe he's just one of the guys now whose myth just kind of like grows with each year and that, what could have been, but it was a fun, exciting heavyweight to watch. Always stuck on the line and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to go Ike, Madman Ike, 6 round knockout.
Ike against Ruiz. I think if Ike catches him, he definitely goes. Sturdy guy Ruiz, but Tua showed that if he gets hold of, you will go. Quarterfinal number 3, Gabe. Over to you then, 2 minutes or less. Speak about whatever you wish. Talking about a madman. Could you imagine Gallotta against Ibeabuchi? Don't get ahead of yourself. Gallotta against a guy who was a bit of a puncher on the way up, had to retire due to a brain bleed. We'll put that to one side. Gallotta against Joe Macy. Gabe, Gallotta against Joe Macy.
Just because you mentioned it, I'm going to go with Gallotta. I think just the end of that one's probably more fun. I don't know much about Macy. I'm trying to recall.
He fought trash. That's all I can remember.
Varel Williamson, didn't he? Who did? Vinny Madaloni, maybe at one point. I can't remember.
I don't know enough about him to pick him. I'm not the kind of person that rates Andrew Gallotta, but I'll just go with him over a little bit more knowledge for that sake, and because of him and Ibeabuchi.
Yeah, we're going to be rating Ibeabuchi over maybe what he could have been rather than what he was. He had some excellent wins. Quarterfinal number 4, could see a standout here, Rob, in the tournament. A guy who pretty much achieved more than the others. Michael Mora against big punching Russian Oleg Maskayev.
It's a good fight, actually. Mora certainly had all the attributes, and probably should have done even more than he did. He was a very good fighter. I'm going to say Mora by KO in this one, but he could have fallen apart either and got KO'd himself. But tonight, Matthew, he's going through to the semi-final.
Absolutely, Michael Mora rocking the big beard back in the day. Good heavyweight as he was. Maskayev could punch. He could pull out an upset. At one point, he was highly rated by HBO, along with Klitschko and David Tua as being one of the next big things. Didn't quite work out for Maskayev, but he could definitely dig, Andy.
He had that. Was it him that had that big, huge knockout of someone that fell out the ring? Was it?
That's right. That's right. He knocked. Or was he knocked out the ring, or he knocked someone else out the ring, and then someone throws a chair and it hits Steve Schmoger off the head while they're trying to get Maskayev back into the ring?
Was it Maskayev? He fell out the ring. I'm trying to remember. Who's that against?
Was it Rackman? Was it Hasim Rackman?
I'm sure.
Punch Maskayev. I
think so.
Can't remember.
Oh,
you remember, Rob? Who was it in the Maskayev fight when he got punched out the ring and then Schmoger gets hit with a chair?
I think it was Rackman, was it?
Was it? I think it was Rackman, yeah.
Rackman. Is he in this tournament? I bet he is.
No, that's it. He's too good for this.
Maybe the chat's dropped it in yet, so they're there, no?
Yeah, if the chat no, throw it in. Anyway, so we've got Corey Sanders, Ike Ibeabuchi, Andrew Gallotta, and Michael Mora. Let's just put them straight together, Andy, shall we? Semi-final number 1. Corey Sanders with the big left hand against the madman, Ike Ibeabuchi. Who you got?
I'm going to go Ike by stoppage. I think it's a bloodbath of a fight. That I think it's a shootout. It's going to be a war. But Ike's just different kind of crazy. African derby, Nigeria against South Africa as well. So I think he's Nigerian, isn't he? It doesn't matter. But I'm going to say Ike ices him. I'm going to go 8 rounds. I think, am I right in saying Sanders' defeats are by stoppage? Don't know how many it is, but I'm sure that's right.
Vitali stopped him. God, who else beat Sanders? Can't remember now. Who else did he fight?
Rackman beat him.
Rackman beat him. Can't remember, you know. He had a lot of WBU fights, didn't he? Corey Sanders. That's a career I'm going to have to go back on, Andy. I can't think.
Yeah.
The boys have cleared it up in the chat, by the way. It was Oleg Maskayev who knocked Hasim Rakhman out of the ring.
Who was it, mate?
Maskayev knocked Rakhman out.
Right. What fight was that, first or second?
I can't remember. I know they fought twice. I think it was the first. I'm pretty sure it was the first. Yeah, anyway, Ike Bayabuchi was a beast, the boys are saying. Let's move on to semi-final number 2 with you, Gabe, and then the final, everybody can have a dig. Andrew Galotta against Michael Moorer, Gabe. Andrew Galotta against Michael Moorer.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Andrew Galotta against Michael Moorer.
Moorer. I'm going to take Michael Moorer on that one. Like I said, I just don't rate Andrew Galotta that highly. I mean, he was always in the picture, and I suppose there's some merit for that, but I think I'm going to go with Moorer.
No worries. Right for the final, give the boys a chance each. Then, first of all, to you, Rob. It's been a fun little tournament, actually. If anybody else wants to throw anything like this in, then I'm all ears. Final, Rob. Michael Moorer against Ike Bayabuchi. We know exactly what Moorer achieved. We don't know what Bayabuchi might have been, but he had a hell of a run while he was still semi-sane. Who you got?
Moorer with a points win, actually. Although, I don't know. I think just Moorer's fundamentals get him through in an exciting enough fight. Like I said, Michael Moorer, I think could have done more. Could have done more
than he did.
Yeah, I think he could have. So I'm going to give him the edge in this one.
There's one for Moorer then, Andy. I know that Foreman was an all-time great puncher, but you could imagine if Bayabuchi was to catch him with those clean right hands. Was it a chin issue? Was it the fact that Foreman was such a big puncher? Could Bayabuchi find some joy against Moorer's beard?
Maybe. You just wonder how much of that was due to tiredness with Moorer. Plus, there were always questions about his mentality and that as well. But the thing is, his ability, and that was never in question. I mean, I think it ran the family and stuff. I think his granddad was like an ex-Golden Gloves champion or whatever it was. Natural athlete in that as well. I think he played football as well, like that gridiron stuff. Trimming Manny. I just think if you're talking everybody in peak condition, no problems, I'm going to go and say Moorer beats him on decision. I just think he's far too rounded for him. Southpaw as well. I can't mind Ike Bayabuchi fighting a southpaw. Actually, I need to go back and check
Chris
that.
Bird.
But I
beat Chris Bird, didn't they?
Yeah. Right. But the other thing as well, I think Moorer was a natural right-hander, wasn't he? So I don't know. He could.
Oh.
There you go. So maybe he was fighting his best weapon, really using his right hand as his the jab. Again, there you go. His strongest hand was his jab, and that's the key punch. I'm going to say he does it something like 117, 111 points.
Yeah, Tua did KO Moorer, but that was in 2002, I think. I was in Cuba watching that fight on a Showtime stream. I think Joe Calzaghe fought Miguel Jimenez earlier on in the evening. Or no, hang on, when I was in Cuba, it was Holyfield against Bird. Don't worry about my holidays, everybody. Let's move on. Gabe, so Michael Moorer's got 2 votes. Your view is academic, but tell us anyway, Moorer or Ike Bayabuchi?
I'm going with Moorer. I got him this far, so I got to roll with him. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like he's a little bit more composed and probably, I think Rob hit it fundamentally sound. So I'm going to go with him on this one.
Well done, Ike Bayabuchi. We haven't got a title for you. I'm sure the WBA or the WBC will come up with something. DT Knockout Opinion says Tua was a beast. Was he a beast, though? He had a big left hook and he He was great at knocking people out, but the best fighters, especially with a jab, the likes of Lewis, beat him. So I think Tua was okay to a level. Would have been interesting seeing him fight Mike Tyson at one point. But no, I'm not so sure, to be honest, about Tua, whether he was that beast. Let's wrap up a few things then, Rob. Right up your street, this one. I was trying to save it for Ozzy, but it doesn't look like he's going to appear. Friday the 31st of July. Kevin Adjarko knocking out Jez Smith in the 9th round. Lyndon Arthur, 16-0, getting a win over Dex Spellman. Looks like he's going to fight Anthony Yard next. What did you make of Arthur?
Yeah, I don't know. He's a bit of who wants him, isn't he? Like, he hasn't got a style that's going to appeal to the wider masses, maybe in the same way Yard has. But I'd probably give him the edge against Yard. I think he beats Yard. Like, whether he gets it is another thing. But I thought he boxed Spellman's tough. Faked a mask of blood by the end of the fight. Kept coming. But Lyndon Arthur just had a little bit too much class for him, a little bit too much. I had it by about 4 rounds, I think. Just a little bit cuter, good at slipping shots, looked quite comfortable in their throwing combinations. So yeah, I give him the edge against Yard, to be honest with you. There's issues over the Yard gas tank, obviously. I think he's made all wrong for a fighter. And I think fellas to condition themselves should be sparring. Just call me old school. I just think lads should spar to get themselves fight fit. Kevin Adjarko, we know all about him here in Ireland. Highly touted amateur. Has looked good since he went over pro. Thought he was hittable the other night. Thought he showed a good beard. Actually, got clipped pretty heavy early in the fight. So with some clean shots, and they never budged him. Did some great work when he had Smith against the ropes. Left hook to the body, looked a killer. So yeah, Kevin, I like what I see from him. I think he's turning into a fine pro, but we won't know the answers to any of these questions until he steps up in levels. But he looks the business, but I think he could do with tightening up the defence a little bit.
I think he was a bit over-eager, Rob, maybe to impress on his big opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, like he put himself. The talk over here is that he put himself in the shop window now. That he put in a good performance on British TV, and the British commentators took to him, and people are talking about him. So, nice little profile booster. Yeah, I'd say he was keen to impress, but again, you probably shouldn't be shipping shots to a guy of that level. So he needs to tighten up the defence a little bit. He's by far the finished article, but it's taken over nicely since he turned pro.
Yeah, on the undercard, Nick Ball, they were giving him the big build-up. He reminded me of that Joe Laws, quite overeager, quite small compared to his opponent. I think he'll come unstuck against someone with a decent jab and an uppercut, so wasn't really that fussed on him, to be honest. Quick word from you, Andy, on Lyndon Arthur. Dex Spellman. Deck never stopped coming. Didn't really put Lyndon under too much pressure, though, considering I thought the scores were probably wider than the 116, 113, 116, 12 suggested.
Yeah, I would say he did what he had to do, I suppose. It wasn't exciting, but there was a couple of things I picked up on and stuff. We just need to wait and see how it develops here going forward and that, because obviously I think at this point, I mean, am I right in saying that they're talking about Yard next day?
They are indeed.
I think they might be a wee bit early and stuff. I think Yard might take him out, especially late. But I like to see him kind of get the left hand up a wee bit. Like he's got that kind of frotch bit, but he kind of keeps the left hand low and then kind of like throws the jab in a kind of upward motion. So I like to see him kind of like bring it up a wee bit in that. But I don't know about his speed. I don't know if he's got another gear to him, but it'll be interesting. I did say to you as well as there's a couple of things I've seen to him actually that reminded me a wee bit like Gabriel Campillo. Just the kind of way he kind of boxes, the way he moves about and stuff. And another one who's not maybe a big hitter, especially when he got up in levels and that. And to be honest, if Arthur can have any type of career that Campillo had, and that, then he'd be doing very well. But he looks decent, I must admit. But says the proof will come in the next couple of years. That if he keeps going what he's doing, just like to see him tidy up a wee bit, and we'll see where he goes and that. But if Yard day next, I think it's maybe just a fraction too early. I think Yard will probably come on wonders actually after that Kovalev fight. Certainly he's got to have learned from it anyway, especially when you get a fighter on the hook and that, you fucking take him out, that's it. So yeah, if it gets made next, good and well, but I like what I see from him, but obviously still a work in progress.
Quick one for you, Rob. Yep.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say the middleweight, the comment, I forgot his name.
Kevin Adjarko.
Yeah, Adjarko, yeah, so I like to see him slow down a wee bit. I don't know if you say maybe over-eager and that, but real runs the risk of kind of like burning out a wee bit and that. especially if he goes up in levels and he kind of bang his opponents with, but good body work and that. Maybe just needs to steady it up a wee bit, just pick his moments to attack and that, because he'll need to do that when he goes up in levels anyway. So, yeah, I like to look at him as well, but just slow it down a wee bit.
Just slow it down. Yeah, Dave Trick said Yard fought no one domestically, had one good round versus Kovalev. Something that came in our comments, actually, Rob, I thought you might want to discuss a potential battle between future Canelo opponents, for better or worse. The Don said Jason Quigley would beat John Ryder, no problem. Ozzy disagreed. The Don said, yes, he would. Ryder has been beaten by terrible fighters. Quigley was a world amateur champion. He'd box his ears off. Interesting one there. What do you think, Quigley against Ryder? Rob, where would you see that going?
Good fight. I think I kind of wouldn't rule out Jason Quigley in that fight, because he is technically very good, but Quigley has to show it now. Like, it's, you know, he's working with Andy Lee now. He has to put the foot on the gas and put in some performances. He had a couple of learning fights with Andy, but like, I'm not saying time is ticking for him, but from where he was in his career, a lot of interest behind him. Golden Boy over in the States, then a loss to Toriano Johnson. He really has to show he belongs there. Ryder's shown he belongs there over the last 4 or 5 fights easy. He hasn't put in a bad performance, even in the fights where they jobbed him, like against Rocky Fielding and Callum Smith. You know, he's probably the unluckiest guy in the game sometimes when it comes to decisions. So yeah, he has losses on his career. Lost to Billy Joe Saunders, lost to Blackwell, was it? And you know, he got caught that night too. It could happen. Like, but I don't think he's he might have lost the fighters, but I think he's shown over the last, as I say, 5 or 6 fights, especially since he's gone to 68, that he's a world level operator, and he's up there. Whether he's not an elite fighter, I don't think, but he's definitely shown more so far than Jason Quigley. So you'd have to give Ryder the edge. And you think that just on form and just on what you've seen of him before, that maybe he could make Quigley, his pressure would just tell against Jason Quigley, who looks to me like the type of fighter who needs to be high on confidence to get the best of him. I think he shows signs of fragility mentally in the ring. So I think Ryder would be favourite in that fight if it was to be made now, certainly.
Quigley reminds me, Rob, a bit of a fighter you might remember from about 10 years ago for Yuri Foreman, James Moore. Do you remember? He's from Arklow, ended up fighting in New York.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it probably has a lot higher caliber. Than more in terms of his amateur credentials and stuff. Like the listeners said, the world gold medal is not given out willy-nilly. You earn those. And like I said about Quigley before, showed a lot of ambition. It's just something I liked about him, to go pro and go to the States. He could have stayed on the amateur program, on the high performance, getting his decent salary, above average salary, but he wanted to go and make some real money. So, like I said, time will tell about Jason Quigley. He had the attributes, but we see this all the time. Fellas have attributes all the time. Most fellas that turn pro have attributes at some stage, so it's how you apply them, isn't it?
Certainly is. On to next week, Andy, before Value of the Week's Matchroom Fight Camp number 2. Don't think it was as strong as last night's. Chris Billam-Smith, first of all, going in against Nathan Thorley. Billam-Smith with 1 loss on the record. He's a big puncher. Thorley really hasn't fought anybody of note. I'd be surprised if Billam-Smith lost that one. Anthony Fowler going in against Adam Harper. Expect Fowler to win that. Aqib Fiaz, not really a puncher, going in against Kane Baker, who's tough as old boots. The main event, Terry Harper, I think will deal pretty handily with Natasha Jonas. Anything that sticks out, Andy?
Nothing, mate, to be honest with you. No, I mean, obviously we're all hoping and praying that Adam Harper can rely on that experience for losing the Commonwealth title fight in Australia and come back and beat Tony Fowler. You know, that would be the greatest thing.
It's not going to be by knockout, Andy. No knockouts in 9 wins.
I know, but again, this is what I'm talking about. You know, playing it safe. You know, see it as a fucking decent fight next weekend. Oh, it's blood and guts, back and forward. By the way, we can leave it Adam Smith for fucking Belly of the Week, by the way. That motherfucker. But yeah, can you imagine if this is back and forward and people are going to lose their minds? Oh, Eddie, you put on a great card, great fight. Aye, but he's got no knockouts, pal. So how's Fowler fucking struggling, so to speak? You know, so this is what you can see. Harper against Jonas, zero interest in that. Apart from, I dare say Canelo will be watching the fight for afar. You know how it is, even Eddie. Chris Billam-Smith and that, yeah, I remember him speaking to a couple of times and that, especially there in Belfast when he was wearing the McGuigan's and that, so I expect him to win by knockout. Then I know nothing about the guy Thorley that he's fighting. I think he's Welsh, that's all I know about him. I think he'll win by knockout, and that's just me just guessing. But I'm not going to be tuning in, mate. If anybody tells me, yep, this is a good fight to go and watch, I'll watch it. But didn't expect me to be, logging in here next week to be having 20-minute breakdowns of this trash. I say I'm not watching any top ranked cards for here on in. Unless Oscar puts on Virgil Ortiz and Canelo.
Yeah, we like him, Andy, don't we? We like him.
I ain't watching any of that shit that they're putting on either. I downloaded the 2 copies of the Al Siesta show, so I'll wait and see what they're like. I've not got a chance to watch them yet, but that's I'm not going to go out my way next Friday night to watch this trash. Like,
yeah, some decent fighters on the Siesta show. I was going to save this for Ozzy, but seeing as Fowler's fighting next week, it's not so much a question as a rant. People can join in at the end if they want, but from Holt, it came in early. I'm going to read it out anyway. It's quite funny. Holt says, "What's with Anthony Fowler?" Which is pretty much a question in itself. He said he acts like he's the dog's bollocks. Said he wants to fight Charlo for world titles. Said when he turned pro, he was going to be the first person to knock out Golovkin. In reality, he's only fought journeymen and a shot to shit Brian Rose, who pushed him to his limits. Only decent opponent he fought is Fitzy. He got put on his ass en route to a loss. His next opponents put him to lose and make him look good yet again, i.e. a no-hoper, despite Eddie saying fight camp is 50-50 fights only. If you look at Fowler's record, says Holt, they're clearly protecting him. They're conspicuously picking opponents with no KOs or extremely low KO percentages, a lot like Yard leading up to Kovalev. Fowler's next opponent in fight camp is 9-1, as we just mentioned, with no KOs. Before that, Harry Scarf was 8-0 with 1 KO. Before that, Brian Rose, who is known for pillow fists as well as being shot, had a 21% KO ratio. They clearly know his level, despite all the bollocks he spouts, and are seemingly protecting a weak chin. He split with Dave Caldwell also, was a bit of a red flag, said it wasn't the real him versus Fitzy and accused Fitzy of being on the juice to boot. Finally, Holt says, lost at domestic level, and next opponent has no KOs, but he's desperate to do a job on Charlo and Golovkin, lads. Asylum's thought on his matchmaking?
Yes.
Hashtag CBD.
Yes, I'll have a go at that. Eddie Hearn, I just googled it there, right, and I found it straight away. Eddie Hearn's tweet, August 1st, 2014. Fowler is a mini Carol Froch. I'm telling you, the only thing Anthony Fowler's got anything resembling Carol Froch is an ego and a confidence off the fucking scale. Problem is, at least Froch could back his shit up. Fowler's still got to fucking prove it, and you got tuned up of fucking Scott Fitzgerald, who's just like going off the rails and stuff like that. So Fowler's at it. I mean, he's just at it. I mean, I care. Okay, he trains hard, we get it all. You know, he's this, that, and the next thing and that. But fucking, he's not the dog's bollocks. He is not relevant to the middleweight division. You'll go down in weight, probably try and beat up on these fighters, these club fighters and stuff. But when it comes to when the rubber meets the road, he's going to come up short. And he'll just revert to tactics now. I mean, go back to like say when he fought the Indian guy in the Commonwealth Games. He's fucking hitting them when the guy's on the fucking floor. And next minute he's in his pro debut doing the same thing and stuff like, oh, I've never done that before. The guy's a fucking snide. Fucking selling autographs and stuff while he was on the Olympic squad. Or other stuff. Make money, I suppose, every way you can. But I can imagine or was told that the Olympics GP squad members are well looked after and stuff. So yeah. He's just blagging it for me, like.
Aren't we all? Any counterpoints there you want to, or do you want to pile the misery on Rob to old fouls? Hashtag CBD.
What age is Fowler, by the way?
I think he's about 31, isn't he? Any Anthony Fowler love, Rob? Building himself up here. I think he is early 30s.
So his window's kind of short then, isn't it? I mean, what is it? I mean, he's kind of float between 154 and 160, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean,
probably struggling to make 54 now. He's getting on a bit. It's like us, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, you would think, what is he any better or worse than Cheeseman and Eggington at 154? I think he's at the same level. That is his level. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, Eggington's won a European title.
Aye, exactly. But go fight these guys. You know, this fucking route to path of least resistance and stuff. I mean, he fights this Latvian trash bags, then he fights Fitzgerald, gets fucking done there, and he's fucking back to fighting guys who can't punch.
He's 29.
Fellas with no shoes and whatnot.
Yeah, I remember that guy sliding
on the bottom of their shoes. Fucking hell, man! Like, and then he's putting up pictures of himself with all the belts he's collected and that. Like, I love it. I say when Bellew was ranting and raving about him a few years ago, and then I saw him, I knew there's some fighters you just know when you see them early on, they're not going to do it, and I think he falls into that category. Fitzgerald would have been robbed that night if he hadn't got the fight. Would have been absolutely robbed, absolutely smashed him up. And he hasn't shown anything since that. So I don't know where all this ego and hype has come from around Anthony Fowler. Like Andy says, he really has to prove it in the ring. So he can do as many IFL interviews as they want. He can say what he wants on Twitter. But he has to beat fellas in the ring. So he hasn't done that so far. Apart from that fella with the skates. He's good that night.
You know his career highlight. In fact, two of them actually. The night he got fucking dropped in the Olympics, right, and got knocked out the tournament, obviously, and then just before he fought Fitzgerald, when he's sitting back there, I'm feeling confident, lad. You know, can't wait to go in there and do the business, do the damage, and all that sort of stuff. That was one of the greatest nights in boxing Twitter, by the way. The whole spectrum just fucking united as one. It's great when that happens. Power to the people.
It's very divisive normally, but that was a night where we all had something in common for sure.
Apart from Scousland, obviously. I mean, obviously there were a handful of Scousers who can't stand them and stuff like that, but probably 90% of Scousers and that, so just, cut them off, send them off to the coast. But yeah, I think the whole United Kingdom and Ireland were fucking united that night. Beautiful moment. Beautiful moment.
Yes. Good old Fowler. Well, I've lost Gabe. Let's go on to Belly of the Week's episode 354, and then we'll finish up, shall we? First one, I got nomination here, Men's Luxury Fitness, going in for James Hawley, boxer exposed in homophobic rant, dropped by MTK, the arbiters of morality. Not going to have the likes of Hawley hanging around, destroying their image. Got rid of him straight away. He was having someone bangs or something as a cross-dresser down in... Oh, for fucking, I don't know. I might get cancelled myself here for saying I think I should just leave this one.
Is he a friend of Paulie's by any chance?
I don't know.
Peer
Better
Paulie,
quit while I'm
man,
behind here, Andy.
Listen, mate. Fuck it. You know what it's like. We had the BLM guys on there chasing us as well for Tommy and that. You know. Yeah, they're a shite I get sometimes just because I'm Scottish. And everybody thinks I'm Tommy sometimes. So see, they hear me on here. That's fucking Tommy. That's that fucking wanker. So they're like,
not Tommy.
It's not me.
It's Andy. It's Andy, not Tommy. Anyway, nomination for James Hawley. Matthew Dolan has nominated Philip Lloyd Williams. Prime David Hay versus a prime Tony Bellew at cruiserweight. Who would have won, says Philip Lloyd Williams over on Facebook. Coney's Hampton, Eddie Hearn. This is nominated by Connor.
That's not a Bellew of the Week nomination, is it?
Well, it's a Bellew of the Week nomination for Matthew Dolan. I'm glad you said that, Andy, because I was looking through that one and I actually got me thinking. I was thinking, Tony Bellew against prime David Hay. I was thinking and trying to come up with the variables and stuff. So I don't know.
Well, the thing is, I watched the Hay fight Linga Mock just the other night there. I actually forgot as to how badly fucking dinged up he got. He got dropped in the second round. He was fucking gone, man. Gone. So you just wonder, Bellew got that left hook power, baby. He's got that He-Man power.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself, actually. So you never know. Yeah, I've been reading David Hay's autobiography. What is the book that was written by Elliot Warsall? Yeah, and he's talking about the Lolenga Mock fight. We're on to the Carl Thompson fight now, actually.
When's Rita Ora's autobiography coming out?
Oh.
Soon. We'll get that one for you, Rob. Anyway, thank you for that, Matthew.
Oh, I'll be reading that one. I'm looking for a nice photo inlay in that one.
Connor at Con931 has nominated Eddie Hearn. He called, was it one of the most, James Tennyson, one of the most exciting punchers in world boxing, pound for pound, the Irish Golovkin and all this type of stuff. He's trolling, isn't he, Eddie, to get on lists like this? I think he's trolling us all. Sam Dorsey is nominated. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. pay-per-view. Sky Sports Boxing, it's like watching art, says Johnny Nelson, who believes that Jordan Gill will be too slick for Reece Bellotti when the pair meet on Saturday night. Yeah, Jordan Gill on a Saturday night, Rob. It's like watching art. I often think that myself.
Oh, it's like watching Frank Buglioni.
I was just going to say, is it like watching Rembrandt and Michelangelo, eh?
Oh, my God.
Can you see what it is yet?
Gavin Stevens
Tie me kangaroo down, boy. Tie me kangaroo down.
Marcus Bellinger has nominated Eddie Hearn on IFL TV. I have to go balls deep, says Eddie, going in raw on Fight Camp, etc. Hands of Stoned has nominated Clarissa Shields. I don't care what you all say, over 90% of these men boxers do not possess the skills that I have, and my accomplishments show that. If I was a man in this sport, I'd be a billionaire. The fact I'm being overlooked because I'm a woman is ridiculous. Show don't tell, isn't that the old adage, Andy? Clarissa's telling us how great she is. Maybe she should just stick to doing it in the ring.
Thirsting for acceptance. End of the day, she's, You want equal pay? Fight 3-minute rounds for 12 rounds. Fight a man. So I'm going to say.
Fight a man. Darms has nominated Eddie again. You're the Irish Golovkin talking to James Tennyson. Sean at Evanfield TB has nominated Michaela Meyer. She's going in on Terry Harper. Harper said she believes she'll end the fight inside the distance. Meyer was a little bit confused about this. You can't fight inside the distance. That literally makes zero sense. Good luck, though, says Michaela. I think she's getting a bit confused there. Luke Cloherty has nominated Marshy. Dear Mr. Hearn, could you possibly come down to the ring on Saturday night with Dominic Ingle singing Fast Car Eddie? Then get in the ring and say, welcome to Fight Camp. The first rule of Fight Camp is no easy fights. Cheers at Eddie Hearn.
Cringy bastard. Honest to God, man. Hand in your man card, delete Twitter, go off the bridge. Fucking Jesus suffering.
Oh dear.
That's the one thing I did not miss with the lockdown, by the way. People just brown nosing Eddie Hearn's cheese hole, by the way. I mean, fuck me.
Eddie, bit of fast car Eddie. He's been nominated again. He's got quite a few nominations, Andy, this week. Danny Beckham has nominated him for this one. This was bullshit, wasn't it? When he did, they went live on Sky Sports and he goes, what is it? Hello, motherfuckers. And then he pretended that he hadn't done it on purpose, but while then proceeding to retweet absolutely everybody who put the thing up. He done that on purpose, didn't he?
I never saw it, mate.
Do you not see it?
Eddie,
the guy,
do something like that. He wouldn't do something like that. I mean, it's not like the Twitter account. Yeah, exactly. It's not like the Twitter account for the No Context Turn is pinging from Essex or anything. I mean, come on, Eddie wouldn't do something like that, man. Come on. Stage something. Eddie, come on.
They all lapped it up today. They all lapped it fucking up. It's just fake news. Maybe it was Russians.
No, maybe it was Povetkin. Any excuse to get him over.
There you go.
Do you know what? I have a funny feeling that fight's not going to happen, by the way. I just have something.
Yeah,
something telling me that fight, them two don't end up in the ring.
Listen, as I says, mate, can you imagine if like Taylor and Sarah, she's fighting Pursoon now, eh? Definite.
As far as I know, I don't think Fury against Allen's taking place. So Bacoli, you'd think, would probably jump in, wouldn't he, in the main event?
Well, tell me what happened. Did Dave Allen want $1 million for that fight or something? He's the A side, eh? Brings the banter.
I'm not. Well, they could bring him in the main event. He's already fought Dillian White once. So, I mean, if Povetkin say pulled out, they would have to do something, wouldn't they? You got Bacoli and Kuzmin on the undercard. I mean, how could you make that interesting? Maybe if Bacoli chose his own, what he's going to put on the video screen in his own walk-in, that could maybe spice things up a bit. Other than that, I don't think it's going to be very interesting, is it? Like,
yeah. He's on the Matchroom card, by the way, where the other guys got dumped off Matchroom. I mean, I don't want to fucking cause any controversy here, but maybe that guy has a case here that he could argue. That might be an unfair suspension, not saying what side of the fence you're on, but like fucking hell, man. Bacoli's on fucking prime time pay-per-view, baby. And your man's got the boots. Seems a bit harsh, like.
Yeah. Andrew G has nominated Hey Boy, bringing out my David Hay fanboy again and saying no heavyweight alive today would live with the 2011-2012 version of him. Too powerful, too fast, too good, says Hey Boy. Bash the Great has been nominated. I'm not sure who by. Take it or leave it. Eddie and his team are a bunch of monsters. Mustard change this boxing game for the better. And then it takes a turn for the weird. At Eddie Hearn, I have a little sister for you when you visit Nigeria. This guy is great. Little muscly arm. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But, good luck anyway.
That's a bit strange. That's a bit of a strange offer, isn't it? If only Eddie knew someone. I wonder if he knew someone with a plane that could charter a flight there for him. I don't know.
I don't know why. Barry might know someone.
Maybe have a word.
Barry might know someone.
Porky Ross has nominated Steffi Bull. I can't bring that one up. Sorry, Porky, I can't get it. Nomination for Steffi Bull anyway. Why not? I've got a few more here. Oh, the old phone is failing me. Don't do this now. Where are we? Oh, yeah, Dominic Henry has nominated Bean. Bean was having a shocker last night, saying egg versus cheese. Adam Smith intoned here at Matchroom Square Garden. Haven't been following anything, says Dominic. So don't know if that's what they're calling it. Bean was terrible, wasn't he?
Oh, my God. I tweeted out last night, by the way. I tweeted out last night, mate, and my Twitter blew up. I could not believe he said that. I was like, you fucking sales mode. I was like, I busted laughing. Said, you seriously just say that you did it? You had to say something, but he was full crash salesman mode last night. That was just absolutely deplorable. Fucking bad Matchroom Square.
Square Garden.
Eddie, bend me over.
In no way connected to the real Madison Square Garden, which is, of course, in New York, where September 11th happened all those years ago. We'll never forget.
There's no way referred to the tragedy which happened on 9/11. America will never forget.
Good old.
Bernard Hopkins beating Felix Trinidad.
Aye. And what an ending we've got here, the 12th round, just like Hopkins against Trinidad, Eggington against the Cheese, egg and cheese omelette, here we go, brains are scrambled. Eggington's 24, by the way, he's going to have fucking Cabbage Patch dogs for fucking pals soon, by the way.
It looks like something out of, what was that movie, The Deliverance? Do you remember?
The Goonies. Something for the Goonies, man. Looks like sloth after a fight, man.
Caesar's not exactly a looker either, is he? It's like...
right. Chuckwill, I can't remember what your nomination was. You're going to have to send it to me again, sir. Talking of Anthony Fowler, as we were earlier on, Callum at Snee2410 has nominated Anthony Fowler. This was come up on Sky Sports. Classic fights. Anthony Fowler versus Theophilus Tete. A chance to relive a classic boxing bout as Anthony Fowler takes on Theophilus Tete in March 2020 at the Manchester Arena. That was the one with the guy with the shoes.
That's the one. Sliding the other place. He was like an extra out of fucking Torval and Dean.
A classic boxing bout, according to Sky. For God's sake. Scraping the old barrel. Javier Serrano UK has nominated Chris Howes. Chris Howes should stick to the mortgage game, as it says in his bio. You wouldn't see Frank Warren putting on such a great show in these circumstances. And I'm not talking about the fights, which are also spot on. Talking about the fireworks, #fight camp, says Chris Howes. Javier has also nominated Joseph McKenzie. Johnny Nelson is a class act and worth 10 of any politician we have in this country. We need people like Johnny in Parliament, a man who can unite and balance the injustices of our society, a great boxer, but a better man. So there you go, Joseph McKenzie, bigging up Johnny Nelson then being nominated.
Do you know that Johnny Nelson phoned the cops because some tradesman fingered his dog?
Tried to rape his dog, that's right. A great man. Animal welfare as well thrown in, Andy, get him into 10 Downing Street.
You know the funny thing about that? The funny thing about that fucking phone call was, see he phoned up the first time, the police just laughed at him by the phone down. So he says, I was proper fucking raging. I phoned them back. I got the same response. He hung the phone up on her. I'm just thinking about this poor fucking dog. Johnny's like, for that day on, I couldn't look at the dog, but just like I couldn't look at him, like that. I was like, oh, poor beast, man. Back in the days of Joe Gallagher being a plumber, eh?
Smiggers Titties sent me something on Twitter. I haven't actually looked at it, but it's something to do with Errol Spence. I can't watch it while we're on here because I don't know what he's got cowboy boots. He's going around with a horse. Not really sure what he's up to. Maybe it's Johnny Nelson related. Maybe the horse is getting it. Any nominations from you, Andy?
Yeah, AB. He's basically saying he wants to be world champion again, which everybody wants to be world champion these days. 140, 135. If it's the right opponent, I'm not playing at 135, but I think my next fight will be at 140. At this point, it doesn't matter who I fight. I can fight my assistant. It's the kind of level you're fighting at anyway, you fucking fat bastard. But he says, I'm a natural lightweight. If I can come back, but then he goes and saying, if I can come back to 135, I'll destroy the weight class because I can still make the weight. Honestly, fuck off, you fucking fat waster. Dillian White's saying he's expecting the best Povetkin in a long time, knows what's at stake. Well, I know there's been no drug testing going on and stuff like that. It's been suspended for a fair bit. So there is that to it. And Tony Bellew, for just leave him alone, but he's looking for attention. He's asking the question. The British, about last night's card, obviously, says the British Boxing Board of Control need to think about this. Everyone on site is tested. Why is there a need for visors and face masks? Everyone is COVID clear. I just don't get it. Can someone educate me on this? Everyone has been tested, and it's clear. They're all lived in the bubble since Tuesday. So, it's been 4 months since the lockdown, and we've been getting educated every day, either on the news or doing your own research, listening to doctors and stuff and all that other stuff. And Tony still doesn't fucking know as to why you need to wear visors and fucking face masks when you're out in public. So, Tony, it's because the tests aren't 100% accurate, mate. This is for starters.
It's almost like that stint on catchphrase didn't do him any good.
Well, I think he's been spending too much time at Ant Middle and that. I think that's what's happened.
All right, that's trainer man. He can't work out the basic first aid. Yeah, fucking hell, man.
Any from you, Rob? Any nominations? We've lost Gabe, so it's only the three of us now, boys.
Yeah, there was a funny one this week. I don't know if you saw it. Gary Russell Jr., who's becoming more unlikable by the second, by the way.
Yeah.
Came out and said that he snuffed Terence Crawford, punched Terence Crawford in the face, and Terence did nothing about it. And if he wants to at some amateur meetup in the US team, and if he wants to do something about it, he should meet up with him at 47. So then Crawford got on Instagram and was like, look, what happened was I was sparring Carl Dagan. Anyone who doesn't know who Carl Dagan is, he's the nephew of Nazim Richardson. Mm-hmm. And he was a good lightweight himself. As an amateur, he won a Pan Am gold or something like that, I think. And then he turned over pro, didn't quite make it. He's still a pro, but he's married to Lil Mo. Not Lil Mo off EastEnders, the R&B singer. And they do a lot of reality TV and all that now. But he was a good fighter anyway. But apparently he got the better of Crawford in sparring. And Gary Russell Jr. and Crawford were mouthing at each other. And he said that Carl Dagan had beat him up. And then Crawford said something like, well, Mark Davis beat you up, so I don't know what you were talking about. And then Gary Russell, when he was looking at the coach, Gary Russell hit him. So Terence Crawford comes out and says, like, look, ask Carl Dagan, ask Mark Davis, ask everyone who was there what happened. So, and then he went out to go to say to Gary Russell, he was like, look, fuck you coming to 147. If we have a fight now, I'll break your neck. Like, so then Carl Dagan comes out, makes a video saying, I didn't hear it, I didn't see it because I was getting out the ring, but everyone said it was a sucker punch, and everyone was trying to hold back Crawford because he was going to kill Russell, and then they got Crawford kicked off the US team. Like, so then Mark Davis came out and said the same thing happened. So then Gary Russell made another video, said that they're all lying, and everybody knows what he's like because he even made Andre Berto. So everybody knows he's about that life. You bring it to anybody, schoolboy, Andre Berto, Terence Crawford, you name it. So Gary Russell talking to the camera, very tough, in the comfortability of his own home there. I don't know what the fuck is going on with this guy. I'd rather just see him in the ring if he's going to fight. Like, he's sneaking up on Leo Santa Cruz's dad, threatening him. That he beat Terence Crawford up in a street fight. So I don't know what the fuck he's trying to prove, but I'd like to see him try and prove it in the ring. And everybody, all the fighters were saying, Lomachenko beat the fuck out of you. What are you talking about? Like, you've no business talking to Terence Crawford. Like, go and try and find Lomachenko for kicking the shit out of you. Like,
he's going to be chasing Mitch Blood Green down the streets next or something.
Fucking Crawford.
I'd rather watch that.
Crawford would fucking mutilate him in a street fight, man.
Crawford's a wrestler, that as well, like, isn't he? So
he's a grappler on that, man. Fuck messing with him, like.
Yeah.
He's fucking committed, like you fucking.
And he's 20 pounds heavier than him, and he's the best fighter, probably the best fighter in the world. Like, what the fuck is wrong with Gary Russell Jr.? Not even the best featherweight in the world.
I'm hanging with your pops. I put my arm round your pops, bro. Yeah. What are you gonna do about it?
Like,
Chukwu says that Carl Dagan lost to Tony Luis. Hands of Stone, Luis.
Yeah, he lost one fight, I think. Yeah, I think he's getting the reality TV checks. I don't think his head is in the game. Like, he's a good fighter.
Okie doke. Right, Andy, I'm going to go for... I like Joseph McKenzie at the end there, talking about Johnny Nelson as a class act. We had quite a few for Eddie Hearn come in as well. One for Steffi Ball. Yeah, I'm going to go for Johnny Nelson. No, it's not Johnny Nelson. It's about Johnny Nelson. Who was that? Joseph McKenzie is for me this week, Andy. Who are you going for?
There was an earlier one you read out. I can't remember what one it was again off the top of my head.
Any context?
Rapid fire. I'm trying to remember.
Got James Hawley exposing the homophobia. We've got Eddie saying that Tennyson is the Irish Golovkin. Johnny Nelson about the work of art. Clarissa Shields.
No, I'm sorry. Eddie Hearn That
What's the on about with that? Like,
that is a belter. James Tennyson's the Irish goal. Get the fuck out of here,
he's
man.
already had fucking 3 losses or something. How the fuck is he that fucking? Huh?
Fuck me. Just because he's got
Yeah,
21 knockouts and that, he's smashed up domestic. Get the fuck. Aye, Eddie. Aye. Plus as well, Eddie for multiple offences. And I'm going to go Adam Smith for fucking Matchroom Square Gardens. That is just an absolute. See if I was a general manager at MSG, by the way, I'd be taking lawsuits right now. By the way, I'd be suing his ass. Fucking hell, Matchroom Square. That is some bullshit, man. Fair play to him.
Good old Bean.
Bean.
Oh,
Run a bean.
yeah.
Could have been. Should have been. Run a bean.
Let's do it, shall we? Let's do it.
Bean! Would have been, could have been, should have been, never been. Baked bean, creepy bean, beanie, Rumpelstiltskin. We're on to you.
Beanie. Beanie. We know. Evening, Ed.
Evening,
Well,
Ed.
no, yeah, no, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Right, so one for Eddie, one for Mackenzie. Rob's disappeared. I'm not really sure who won that, but congratulations whoever won the Belly of the Week for episode 384. Right, Andy, we're finished up. Just before we go, we haven't done this in a while. I'd like to give a shout out to some of the guys who we listen to, because you get DMs, I'm sure you do as well, from other podcasters, and they're trudging the same pathway as we are. No money, giving up a lot of time, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's good to shout out people who we listen to. So I've got a little list together. You can give a shout out to any of the things that you're listening to, whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube, whether it's videos or whatever. So I'll throw a few out. Shout out to Porky in the chat there. Been listening to a lot of Porky lately. He's putting out quite a lot of good content. Highfield Boxing, Terry, I listen to him as well, although he's not put out any episodes lately. The Boxing Rant with Kenny and Vin. He's a good listen to. Rummy's Corner, he puts out a lot of good videos, historical stuff. I think he's called Jim, possibly. I'm not sure about that. Cheap Seats Boxing, Angelo and JP get a few retweets and DMs from them from time to time. Good guys over there. T Street Controversy, like a bit of him. Steve Turton. Boxing's First in the chat. Jim McDonald's putting stuff out too. Boxing News TV and Take Aims as well is what I'm listening to. Andy, what are you lending your ears to at the moment?
Well, I listen to the Ring Walk podcast from time to time. The guy puts in some betting, especially for the American market and that. So if you're not too well versed into like some of these lesser known fighters on undercards, especially around about the new and that as well. If you want to make a wee bit of money, and that guy does a wee bit of research and depth stuff and that, so he lets you know. I listen to Kenny and Vince. I've been listening to them for years, actually, to be honest with you. I listened to Trish Dixon's podcast, Boxing Life Stories, some good stuff. I really like Crawford Ashley and that. I don't know if anybody listened to Mickey Van recently. Fuck me, that guy could talk. I actually sent Trish a tweet and that. She says, maybe you need to do an encore with Mickey Van and that, because it wasn't long enough. 3 fucking hours he was on that podcast for, by the way.
Have you read his autobiography?
No.
It's actually pretty good. Yeah, I read it. Come out about, it must be about 15 years ago now. It's actually good.
Right. Is it good? I sometimes listen to Montero and boxing. Sometimes, no all the time. Sometimes I listen to him. There's a showing podcast. Doesn't really do a lot of shows, but it's called the Main Event Boxing Podcast. I think it's tied with Fox Sports in Australia. Mm-hmm. If you're into historical stuff, and that, I listen to Knuckles and Gloves Boxing Radio. We've got our very own Bryn Jonathan Butler on there. He talks to Patrick Connor, who does he's a member of the Boxing Writers Association of America, and that does a lot of historical stuff in that, and a lot of people will probably know Eris Pena and that as well. He does a lot of historical stuff, so I listen to him. Mike Tyson's podcast, Hot Boxing, he's got like a whole raft of different. It's not just boxing related. They've got like gangsters on there, rappers, personalities, movie stars, NFL players, that type of thing. I listen to Ryan Scalaway's podcast for time to time, Great Fight North Boxing podcast, so that covers the Canadian scene. They're real interesting comment recently actually as well about the Canadian scene, is they've been shut down entirely, especially in Quebec apparently. So the guys are struggling to get work in that at the minute, and they're really, really thinking that either the government or the state government there is actually trying to close. They're using this as an excuse to put the kibosh on boxing entirely. Because I just think it's just they've just not got the respect for the sport or whatever, and that is. What else? I think that's it, really. I mean, I can only listen to so many in a week in that as well.
I listen to them on 2-speed, Andy, and then you can get through more.
2-speed.
Yeah, if you times 2 the speed, so they're talking quite fast, but you can still make it. It just gets rid of the ums and ahs and stuff, and you can hear it quicker. Get through it quicker.
All right. Well, we need to
Okay.
try that.
Mhm.
Need to try that. No, so that's the kind of thing I listen to. I mean, I subscribe to tons of YouTube channels, but it's mainly for like fights and stuff like that, interviews. I was saying to you earlier, I didn't listen to IFL interviews anymore.
No, neither do I.
Unless it's someone I'm really interested in hearing from or something like that, or a big fight. I'm no bothered. I haven't seen any head interviews since Ruiz beat Joshua. I did watch quite a few interviews of Eddie Hearn after Ruiz beat Joshua. Actually, it was fucking tremendous.
No, they were pretty quick there. He didn't need 2-speed for those. About 3 minutes long. He was off.
But I watched it in repeat about 7 or 8 times. You know how it goes. Yeah,
Boys
so
have thrown in a few here, Andy. I'll just read them out. Joe Kennedy says Jonathan Leah is very good. Yeah, he's quite betting focused.
That's the ring walk guy.
Is that the ring walk? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Chuck Crew says T Street. Tosh Bear says Ultra and Ingram. I didn't know Ingram was still going, actually. Joe Kennedy says the boxing rant. And Al Bernstein's podcast. Tosh Bear says good old Dwyer. Never listened to Dwyer or Hatman. I've never actually listened to them.
Shout out to Billy Graham. Started following us as well. He's got his own podcast out just now after Boxing Monthly, but down the toilet. Okay. He had his monthly feature in there, so he's now doing a podcast now with John Evans. So go and give that a follow.
Yeah,
always, I don't. Oh, fuck! I meant to add Shakur Stevenson into Belly of the Week. Fucking Billy Graham sent him to hell. So basically, Billy Graham basically says that if you want to improve yourself to be the best, fight Lomachenko. And Stevens says, I never said that, dickhead. So Billy Graham came back with a fucking screenshot of Boxing News, that interview that he gave, that he says he should fight Lomachenko. So Shakur Stevenson, listen to that. Also, for time to time, BBC 5 Live, Costello and Buns, I like it for the time to time, but Buns, I can only take him in small doses. And I know he's knows his stuff and that, but fuck me, man, it's just a bit too much sometimes.
Yeah.
That's
pretty much it, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
BDA
really,
boxing, the boys are throwing in. I used to listen to BDA, but it goes for about 3 hours, which is fine, but you can only fit so much in, can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I didn't listen to a lot of American stuff now. I mean, there's only, as I say, Kenny and Vince. I'm trying to find some new stuff to listen to, and that's just something fresh, but there's not much. Well, obviously, there's plenty of podcasts kicking about. We got, there's one coming out every 2 minutes and stuff, but you can yourself, Steve, how long are we doing this for and how hard it is to keep it going?
I know, I was working it out, actually. I always think of myself as the newbie here because of all the boys that have been going about. But my first Asylum visit was just before Frampton fought Kiko Martinez, which would have been September 2014. So I've been around for 6 years.
Ooh,
it's a good stint.
I predate you then.
Oh, yeah, you definitely do, yeah. You were hosting when I came on board?
Fuck, well, there you go. Then you had Matty before me then.
Alex, Dave the Hater, Alistair.
Yeah.
Remember Alistair?
Alistair, aye.
Anyway, let's finish up, shall we? It's only me and you, Andy. They've all deserted us. Gabe, rapping Rob Kelly, yep. Only me and you left over. Thanks to everybody who's been in the chat. We've had a good night. Just touching 10,000 there. Vibrant, thriving chat. Take Ames, Tosh, Bear, Dave, Tricks, Jason Chukwu, Leroy Guts, all the boys hanging around. We'll be back again next week, I suppose. I've been Steve Wellings. We'll catch you all for episode 385. Same place, same time next week, and goodbye.